Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our channel. Today is the 66th Tawheed Halaqah with Professor Muhammad al-Masri. These halaqahs are every week. We are going through the four-part volume of the Professor's Kitab At Tawheed. Today we are actually starting the fourth and final volume that has been translated. And that is volume 4, the basis, Kitab At Tawheed, the basis of Islam, and the reality of monotheism. Inshallah. So this book is about 375 pages, and we'll start the introduction, which is on page 1. Okay, so introduction. Oh, and the date is the 26th of January 2026. Introduction. Tawheed as it pertains to legislation and ruling. Tawheed al-Tashri' wal-Hakimiyya is the belief that Allah, the Exalted, alone with no partner, whatsoever, possesses the exclusive right over legislation, independently and originally. Stated differently, He alone has the prerogative of command. He, the Exalted and Majestic, retains the ultimate and supreme authority as it relates to commandment and prohibition. He is the sole sovereign in all affairs, in all matters of judgment and governance. There is no delegation of authority in this respect to any other in any manner, be that to a celestial being such as an angel, nor even to a commissioned prophet. Allah the Exalted and Glorified, alone without any partner whatsoever, retains the sole right to obedience due to his divine essence. Apart from him, none has the prerogative of command, namely the right to command or prohibit, nor to be deserving in obedience, except by way of his express permission, which has been set out in definitive, explicit textual evidence. He, the Almighty, is the ultimate judge, and there is no judgment or higher form of appeal beyond him. Verse 1341, no one can reverse his decision. يَحْكُمُ لَا مُعَقِّبُ لِحُكْمِهِ. And that's and the next verse, لا يسأل أما يفعل وهم يسألون. He cannot be called to account for anything he does. And that is 21:23. Here it can be observed that the nature of Hakimiyya, the exclusive right of Allah to the prerogative of command, is an attribute of entitlement, unlike the attribute of Al-Khaliqiyya, which is an attribute of existence. He has the power to create from absolutely nothing, inherently and independently. Indeed, there is no creator inherently independent except Allah, and the attribution of such power to any other is false and delusional. It can also be construed as a theoretical assumption or conjecture, having no actual existence in reality. That contrasts, though, with the matter of legislation. There are many that are engaged in legislating, settling the boundaries of the lawful and unlawful, yet this is a matter where those engaged in this have exceeded their limits and bounds, resulting in an encroachment upon Allah's exclusive prerogative of command. Those engaged in legislating are tawaghit, plural of taghut, evil, despicable transgressors. Often this reality is expressed with the phrasing Tawheed al-Hakimiyya, the branch of Tawheed outlining that Allah is alone with no partner whatsoever. He possesses the exclusive right over legislation, independently and originally. Stated differently, He alone has prerogative of command. It could also be expressed with the phrasing of sovereignty belongs to the Sharia. In other words, the divine law revealed by Allah has supreme and ultimate authority over all human actions. That wording may seem practical given that it clarifies the method for realizing this aspect of Tawheed, entailing a return to the divine revelation, namely the revealed law as embodied in the text of the Quran and the authentic prophetic Sunnah, along with what is definitively indicated by secondary subsidiary evidences, whether explicitly stated in the text or correctly derived from them, along with other principles established by clear and authoritative evidence. So, the first chapter of this volume Page 3, chapter 1. What is al-hukm and the meaning of the term hakam? Hakam. As a term, al-hukm in general is the attribution of one thing to another. So when we say this rose is beautiful or fragrant, this constitutes the attribution of something, namely beauty or a pleasant fragrance, which are aesthetic perceptual concepts apprehended through the sense, taste, and return, and a reason to something else, namely the rose, which is a tangible material and a perceptible object. And when we say theft is haram, then we are attributing hurma, prohibition, which is a hukm shari, derived through a particular method, to the matter of theft, which is a perceptible human action, though not necessarily tangible. If a particular individual, let us name him Zayd ibn Amr, confesses to the theft before a judge in a formally recognized court of adjudication, and it becomes clear to the judge that all conditions are fulfilled and all impediments are absent, then the judge, yahkum, rules that his hand is to be severed in a specific manner. In this instance, the judge has attributed the obligation of severing the hand to this particular individual, Zayd ibn Amr. As for the actual act of severing, that might be carried out by an executioner or a medical surgeon who had previously amputated other hands due to cancer, and such amputation might have been based on a hukm, decision or ruling issued by a panel of expert physicians, deeming the severing necessary in order to save the patient's life before the cancer spreads. Our statement that lying is abhorrent is a hukm aqli, amali, i.e., a practical, rational ruling, which is to say, a moral and evaluative judgment. However, our statement that lying is haram, except in 3 cases, this would constitute a hukm shari. From the foregoing examples and others of a similar kind, we may observe that al-hukm belongs to the category of assertions, declarations, or beliefs, and not to the category of actions per se. So this section, the triliteral root and its variant derived meanings. In the Arabic language, the word derives from the triliteral root, hakama, ha, kaf, mim. Taken together with the text of Revelation in the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah, several meanings can be outlined for this, including: number 1, placing matters in their proper context. This is hikmah, wisdom, and the one who possesses or exhibits it is described as hakim, wise.
Hakim.
Or hakim. Yeah, hakim is elongated. Number 2, mastery of a craft and the completion of an action due to its perfection. This is ihkam, and the one who performs it is called muhkim, proficient, and perhaps also called hakim. Judgment concerning human deeds on the day of resurrection and the ultimate resolution of disputes in a final and eternal manner. This is a prerogative belonging exclusively to Allah alone, and there are many well-known and oft-cited verses affirming this. Number 4, legal pronouncement, fatwa, and the issuance of an opinion that the one issuing it believes to be correct. That is the act of judgment concerning religious, sensory, rational, aesthetic, ethical, and other matters. For instance, we judge the doctrine of transmigration of souls to be invalid, as well as the Trinity to be false. We judge lying to be morally abhorrent from a rational standpoint and religiously prohibited, except in a few explicitly stated circumstances. In this connection is the statement of the exalted: should we treat those who submit to us as we treat those who do evil? What is the matter with you? On what basis do you judge? Number 5, arbitration and adjudication in disputes in a binding and enforceable manner. That is qada, judicial authority, which is one of the central powers of the state, alongside the legislative and executive powers. Also, the verse that was just read out earlier was 63:35 to 36. Executive powers. A judge is also called hakim, and the pronouncement issued is a hukm. Number 6, governance, administration of affairs, and execution of decisions. That is the executive authority of the state. The one who exercises this role is referred to as Hakim and may also be called Wali, governor, and Wali al-Amr, guardian of authority or Sultan. In more recent eras, the term Hukuma, government, has become widely used to refer to the summit of the executive branch, that is the Majlis al-Wazara, or cabinet, as well as to the apparatus of governance more generally. The use is accurate, as will be clarified shortly. There are, however, certain complexities and subtle distinctions between those who rightfully deserve the designation of Hakim, i.e., those who possess decision-making authority and sovereignty, and those who are mere functionaries of administration and executive implementation, and thus not from the people of Al-Hukm in the essential sense. But this is not the topic under discussion here. Number 7. Legislation and the enactment of constitutional laws, regulations, and procedural codes. That is the domain of the legislative authority in the state. Included within this seventh category is also the establishment of principles of ethics, conduct, etiquette, and social norm. For this is norm and social norms, for this is in reality a form of legislation and value definition. Though temporal authorities in states and governments do not typically exercise this function directly, it may in fact be exercised collectively by the people themselves in their capacity as a society, that is, as a community in which enduring relationships exist among its members. As for the notion that execution of authority, that is, the administration of affairs and the governance of the people, it constitutes a form of hukm, judgment or rule, and that the one who exercises it rightfully deserves to be called a hakim. Despite the customary usage in Arabic discourse and in the textual sources of the Sharia of the terms wilayatul amr, custodianship of authority, sultan, siyasa, political governance, or even muluqiyya, kingship, this meaning is drawn from the saying of the Almighty and Sublime. The verse I'll read out shortly is Surah 5:44. We revealed the Torah with guidance and light, and the prophets who had submitted to Allah judged according to it for the Jews. So did the rabbis and the scholars in accordance with that part of Allah's scriptures, which they were entrusted to preserve, and to which they were witness. So rabbis and scholars, do not fear people, fear me. Do not barter away my messages for a small price. Those who do not judge according to what Allah has sent down are rejecting Allah's message. وَمَن لَّمْ يَحْكُم بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Thus, the prophets sent to the children of Israel during their earlier era served as hukam, judges or rulers. This understanding is corroborated by the Prophet ﷺ's statement. The children of Israel were governed by their prophets. Whenever a prophet perished, another succeeded him. There will be no prophet after me. There will be successors, khulafa, and they will be many. In response, the companions inquired, what do you command us to do? And he, ﷺ, replied, fulfill allegiance to the first, then the next. Give them their due, for Allah will question them concerning what they were entrusted with. Hence, the prophets of the children of Israel in their early era were yususun, exercising governance, and thus the one who governs is necessarily a hakim, ruler. We specify in their earlier era because this was before they demanded a hereditary kingship, that cursed institution which later turned against them and brought upon them misfortune, as we have expounded upon in another text. Further supporting the position that execution and governments, that is wilayatul amr or sultan, are forms of hukm, rulership or adjudication, is a statement of the exalted in majesty. Do not consume your property wrongfully, nor use it to bribe judges, intending sinfully, knowingly to consume parts of others' property, other people's property. That's Surah 2, 188. ولا تأكلون أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلون بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون. This verse indicates that the term hukam, those who exercise judgment, here is broader than qudat, judges. For people both then and now have brought their disputes not only before judicial authorities, but also before Walat al-Amr, holders of executive authority, and influential officials of various kinds across a wide spectrum of contentious matters. It should also be noted that in earlier times, including during the period of Quranic revelation, judicial and executive functions were not institutionally separated. The distinction between qada, judicial authority, and tanfidh, execution of rule, is a feature of modern constitutional and procedural frameworks, introduced as a measure to safeguard the independence and impartiality of the judiciary and to shield it from the tumult of daily political life and the entanglements of competing interests, in which executive figures and power holders are often deeply immersed. These four aforementioned meanings, namely fatwa, legal opinion, qada, judicial adjudication, tanfidh, execution of authority, and tashri', legislation, are with those which concern us in this present inquiry. These are likewise the categories to which all relevant legal texts ought to be referred and interpreted, unless a specific textual indicator stipulates otherwise. Thus, when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, when the Hakim exercises ijtihad and is correct, he will receive two rewards, narrated in the well-known tradition of Abdullah ibn Amr. It is impermissible to assert that this narration applies exclusively to the Qadi or to the Wali al-Amr, holder of executive authority. Rather, it applies generally to every individual who seeks to ascertain Allah's judgment in a given case for one of the following purposes. Number one, for the purpose of identifying the ruling itself through scholarly inquiry, such as the mujtahid or mufti. Such a person is a hakim. Number two, for the purpose of applying the ruling to a dispute, such as the qadi, and the individual is likewise a hakim. Number three, for the purpose of administering public affairs, such as the imam, leader of the polity, and this may occur in two capacities. A, as executor of a specific ruling in a particular concrete circumstance. In this capacity, he is a hakim. B, as legislator, i.e., by adopting a specific hukm shari in a disputed matter and codifying it into a binding public policy. In this capacity, also he is a hakim. According to al-ihtikam or at-tahakum, this is the act of seeking judgment. Accordingly, al-ihtikam or al-tahakum, that is, the act of seeking judgment, refers to requesting a hukm, ruling, in any of its aforementioned forms, whether through fatwa, qada, tanfidh, or tashri'. The Arabic term al-hakimiyya is one of the alfaz muwalladah, neologisms, that is, a generated expression not derived from any established precedent in classical Arabic usage. It is akin to the other similarly constructed terms such as al-khaliqiyya, creatorship, and al-raziqiyya, providership. The first to employ this term within a political discourse grounded in Islamic doctrine was the late renowned scholar Abu Ala al-Mawdudi, may Allah have mercy upon him. He was the founder of Al-Jama'ah al-Islamiyya in the Indian subcontinent. Thereafter, it was adopted by the distinguished teacher and martyred thinker Sayyid Qutb, may Allah have mercy upon him, who disseminated it widely in his writings, presenting it as a defining marker of the Islamic movement to which he devoted his life. He emphasized its centrality and gave his life in its cause, thus attaining martyrdom and divine honor. May Allah elevate his rank. Hence, al-Hakimiyya signifies the exclusive divine authority of Allah, exalted is He, as the ultimate sovereign and ruler, just as al-Khaliqiyya signifies that Allah glorified and exalted is He, is the sole creator. Stated or expressed differently, He and He alone has the ultimate prerogative of command. Shirk in legislation and al-Hakimiyya then is evidently defined as any statement or belief that contradicts the doctrine of divine exclusivity in legislation and rule. That is the negation of Tawheed at Tashri' wal Hakimiyya, divine unity in lawmaking and governance. This form of shirk is the most widespread in the modern Western world due to the adoption of secularism, erroneously referred to as Almaniya. Secularism assigns the right of legislation to human beings, claiming that sovereignty resides with the people. There's a footnote there. Just a footnote. Theoretically, this may well remain the case for many Western constitutions. In practice, though, the old divine right of kings seems to have morphed into the divine right of the state, with the notion that the modern state is some sort of semi-divine hybrid, which remains sacrosanct. I think that's a note from the editor, and he's well versed in this area. Given that the modern Western world is, in this age, the most advanced in the fields of science and technology, and that it exercises hegemonic control over the destinies of nations and peoples, its civilization, along with its culture, has become dominant and normative, regarded as the benchmark against which all other civilizations and cultures are measured. Meanwhile, the Islamic world has long since fallen from the position of global preeminence, intellectually, civilizationally, and politically for several centuries now. This decline reached its nadir with the dismantling of the Islamic Caliphate in Istanbul after the First World War. Alongside this material and institutional collapse, the Muslim masses and even many among their elites experienced a profound psychological defeat in the face of Western expansion and dominance. As a result of all this, idolatrous polytheistic and unbelieving ideology, namely the ideology of secularism and the rejection of al-Hakimiyya, has spread widely among Muslims, particularly though among those who are Western educated. Many among them have apostatized from Islam, renounced its civilization and its cultural legacy, and become disbelievers and apostates. La diniyin, irreligious, dunyawiyin, worldly materialist, and ilmaniyin, secularist. When we say that many among the intellectuals of the Muslim world have apostatized from Islam, we do not say so metaphorically, nor as rhetorical exaggeration, nor for purposes of eloquence or stylistic embellishment. By Allah, no, we mean it in the precise juridical sense, a true apostasy from Islam, by which they have become kuffar and mushrikeen, having abandoned the deen and separated themselves from the community and the ummah. This blind apostasy and the mortal danger, coupled with the particular importance of the principle of sovereignty of the Sharia, from both the doctrinal perspective for each individual Muslim, and the constitutional perspective for the community, that is, for the Muslim Ummah and the Islamic State, should necessitate a comprehensive and thorough discussion. We must decisively refute the doubts raised about it by the enemies of Allah, namely the traitorous jurists of the rulers, upon whom the wrath of Allah and his curses will continuously fall until the day of judgment. Such a refutation cannot be adequately accomplished by general books on Tawheed or general works on Aqidah. Rather, its fulfillment requires an independent book or series of books dedicated entirely to this pressing matter. So that concludes this chapter. So, Sheikh, any commentary on that? That's a very powerful
clear. If anyone has any question, we'll address later. I think it's very clear. We'll try to make it as clear as possible.
So, for example, when you mentioned about apostasy, so basically, by people act implicitly and explicitly rejecting sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is by necessity shirk.
Yeah, it's apostasy, definitely.
So, I mean, our lands, obviously, it's no coincidence that ruled over by kufr. Many people don't even seek any kind of justification. Like previously, it was Tunisia and places like that. Saudi, they tried to hide behind some kind of facade of Islam, but among many of the secular elites, there's not even a pretext. I'm assuming that's what you're mentioning there.
That would be done. People who are would be done kafir or hypocrites. They would try to cover it up, sell it to the masses under various titles, like other hypocrites also. When they allow the kuffar fight them, oh, we are protecting the national interests, we are preventing invasion, we are preventing occupation. They will not do it so openly without any pseudo justification. And all the justification are being responded to in the Quran in the case of allegiance. says clearly, we are afraid that we lose a battle, so we keep alliance with these guys and fight under their banner as a self-protection. No, that's not an argument. It's not acceptable. That's it. That's it. Already handled and clarified in the Quran exclusively. So the same with the Hakimiyya. With the ayat we just mentioned, the ayah of Hukm, that we have revealed the Torah, that's the source of our legislation, I mean, codifying statutes and so on. That's not the Hakimiyya. The Hakimiyya is the original revelation itself, what is contained, the normative injunctions in there. But formulating it in books of fiqh, formulating it in articles and constitution, that's a human activity. Is a form of ijtihad. And phrasing it in a form which is for easy management and application. But there's a difference between deriving a constitution or a law from revelation or deriving it from human sovereignty or the sovereignty of the king or alleged rationality and benefit and so on. It's fundamental difference. So whoever rules, like the ayah says, rules means judge, give fatwa, apply punishment and so on, not without what Allah revealed in the Torah, in the case, for example, that you read the ayah about the Torah, the same as about the Evangelion, about the Injil, etc., and all other revelation, not driven from there. This one is a kafir. All types of fatwa, derived not from the revelation. Same with the judicial ruling, which is binding. Fatwa is not binding, just expressing a point of view. Binds nobody. You cannot enforce it by the police. Fatwa. Just ask a scholar and he gives the fatwa. And judicial ruling, that's always someone who has an authority appointed by the state or agreed by the parties to be the arbitrator, and they agree before what he judges, we will accept. If he does not derive it from revelation, he is committing an act of kufr. And the same with administration, etc. It's not driven ultimately from or someone legislating. Like we're saying, we need to formulate the issues of taxation and paragraph number 1, number 2, statute. Okay, statutes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's formal legislation making statutes. If that's not derived from benefit, from Genghis Khan, from whatever it is kufr. If it's derived from legislation, that's Islam and Iman. The derivation may be wrong, that's a wrong ijtihad. That's another issue. But in itself, the reference must be always to the revelation. If it's not to the revelation, it has no authority, and it is the act of kufr. So all of that is important. So these who believe that do not believe in the divine sovereignty and the ultimate reference frame, the seculars, because that's secularism. What does it mean? Essentially, that's ultimately the Western secularism, at least. Then they are out of fold of Islam. They are not doing what Allah has revealed. It may be accidental. Some of the laws look similar to the divine revealed law, or what derived from the divine revealed, or what the fuqaha have developed. But formal similarity does not mean it's the same reference frame and the same root of derivation. I usually give the example, for example, all laws, like a French law, for example, that anyone who is underage is not fully responsible for his action. The guardian would be more carrying part of the responsibility. Or sometimes they divide it in various levels of responsibility. And then the laws usually, if, for example, a child attacks someone, kill him, usually not treated as a fully responsible person. Is not fully guilty by reason of being not mature, not out of the age of maturity, juniority. Say junior, not major. Isn't reach the age of responsibility. That's, for example, the French law states that if you have a law in any Muslim country which says clearly that's this article is derived from the French law, this is kufr. If it says explicitly this derived from the hadith that the pen that's recording the sins is lifted from the child until he becomes mature, and from the sleeping until he wakes up, and from the mentally deranged until he maybe the mentally deranged is a better example, until he wakes up and is cured from him, then you are referring to Allah and His Messenger, and that's Islam. The same article could be Islam and Kufr. the same article in a statute, depending on the reference frame. Okay, it's not the formulation of the article. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is what's the reference frame.
That's similar to Imam Shafi's statement, that which complies with Islam is kufr, as long, if it's not derived from it. I can't remember the exact wording that he used, but it's a famous one. He said that which coincides with Islam is still kufr or something.
Yeah. It does. It doesn't matter that it's similar, happen accidentally to be the same one. It is the reference, who the originator of the norm, the fundamental normative injunction itself.
Okay, so continuing the text.
It comes, yeah. Yeah, it's rational that someone who's mentally deranged can't be held responsible for his acts. Very rational. But this is not the way Islamic law works. It is based on the hadith of the Messenger of Allah and other evidences. That the one who does not have sufficient mental capacity cannot be addressed by the divine injunction, including prohibition, etc., etc. If that's not derived as from there, then it is not Islam. It is something else. Very rational, but it's not something else. Rational is not enough. Because a matter of normative, is a matter of haram and halal, the issue is not rationality. The issue is the divine injunction, the supreme infinite rationality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the upper one, not any finite rationality, which may most of the times, if it is exercised properly, it will approach the divine rationality. It may, but that's not the reference frame. You're not allowed to reference it this way. But when it comes from the divine sovereign, there's no way you can make a footnote. And no way you can argue for supporting, this fits also rationality. No. It fits scripture and the derivation is correct. That's it. Most humans agree that killing someone else, shedding blood, is despicable, is not acceptable. Because if you allow it, society will not function. It will be the rule of the jungle. So you have to restrain it. That's very rational. But that's not the reason murder is prohibited and haram and to be punished in Qiyamah. It's the reason, the injunction. لا يقتل النفس التي حرم الله بالحق. Allah made the souls prohibited. That's the reason he can allow bloodshed in the war under certain condition. That's his sovereign right. You cannot come and say, no, even in war, you have to be absolutely peaceful. No, you don't have to be. That's your imagination, your filthy, your wrong imagination, or your limited finite reasoning. It doesn't count. So it's a matter of fundamental creed about the divine attributes. The meaning of that there's one absolute sovereign, intrinsically and absolutely. No, nobody can share this sovereignty. But why? Because he is the only creator, and he is the only owner, the real owner, the creator. His command is above any other command. His judgment is above any other judgment. That judgment may be very, very rational, very good, and so on. You recognize it. That's nice, alhamdulillah. But this is not the reason that you apply or follow judgment. It's not a fundamental reason.
Okay, continuing the text now. So page 11, chapter 2, understanding the nature of sovereignty. The term siyada, or sovereignty, is a Western legal construct. Its intended meaning, as deduced from the perspective of scholars of positive law, is that it refers to the entity that exercises will and directs it across all types of relations, including with regard to material objects. From this vantage point, the most precise formulation that describes the reality of siyada, according to this concept from the Islamic perspective of Islamic law, is as follows. An absolute supreme authority that alone possesses the right to issue judgments regarding entities and actions, or expressed differently, an original, absolute, general, singular, and unlimited authority that exercises hegemony over both individuals and collectives. Accordingly, the meaning of Siyadatul Ummah, the sovereignty of the nation, for example, is that the nation alone possesses the right to exercise will and to direct it in determining rulings based upon things and actions, particularly in the form of legislating laws that regulate life based on what reason dictates. Whatever the legal or jurisprudential debates may be surrounding the precise definition of siyada, it remains indisputable that there exists a set of defining features and characteristics which are widely accepted as essential to the concept of sovereignty. These constitute a common denominator among all juristic and legal views regarding the nature of siyada. Sovereignty is a supreme will. It's distinguished by qualities that are absent from all other wills. The unifying trait among these characteristics is that it is a self-defining will. The possessor of sovereignty cannot be compelled by any will that is external to itself to act in a particular manner. It only binds itself to a course of action if it so wills. This implies that the authority in question is absolute, for if it were not, it would be subject to another will that determines or limits it, which would contradict the claim that it is an original authority, meaning it does not derive its sovereign status from a prior or superior will. This supreme will is characterized by the following attributes. Number one, al-itlaq, absoluteness. The sovereign is not subject to law, rather the law is an expression of its own will.
As well, yeah.
No external will compel it to act in a given way, for no will exists that is its equal or superior. Its will is always commanding, and no one precedes it in rights. Its relation to others is that of a master to a slave, or a leader to a follower. The slave or follower must execute the commands of the sovereign, not due to their content or rationale, but simply because they emanate from a will that is by its very nature superior to theirs. Number two, as-sumu, supremacy. Within its domain, the sovereign will stands above all other wills, and its authority surpasses all other authorities. There is no higher or even equivalent authority within the realm it governs. Number three, al-wahdaniyya wal-tafarrud, oneness and exclusivity. There can be only one sovereignty within a given domain. If two sovereigns were to exist in the same domain, disorder would ensue. The reasoning is as follows. If both issue contradictory directives, it becomes A, impossible to implement both, which is an impossibility in practice. B, if both are ignored, their sovereignties are thereby nullified. C, if only one is followed, then that one alone is the true sovereign, and the other's claim is invalidated. The perceptive reader may recognize in this the full logical form of the Burhan at-Tamanu, the proof and the meaning that of mutual hindrance from the oneness of Allah.
Yeah.
So that the ayah.
So that's the Western definition, but obviously the dilemma, if you attribute such a sovereignty to kings or even a nation, then you cannot exclude that, for example, a nation like the German decide that the Jews are undesirable, they exterminate them. That's their right, they are the sovereign. But then you have the problem with certain moral issues and grudges and certain other forces, other nations believing otherwise or forced to believe whatever it is. So you have to find some kind of restriction. So they appeal to something, okay, there's some kind, we expect humans to exercise that by respecting the moral law. What this moral law says is internal in the human nature. How it is internal human, how can you read it? How can you get it out? So they go to fitra. The same with kings, since it sounds extreme. So we say it is giving them by the divine. This right has been given to the divine. The divine authorized them, give them this authority. So somehow there's a problem. If sovereignty is used in meaning of state with other state in the international domain, then you have the problem is that it will be then the law of the jungle. But this is not tolerable. It will create problems and wars never ending. So you have to get something of like a rule-based order, something like the national organizations who agree on certain treaties, and supposedly the treaties are derived by some kind of deep moral sense of the states, or agreed upon points like so. Every international treaty will agree, obviously, about that bloodshed is not acceptable, and so on. So you see the problem. Attributing that to anything which is not divine will create problems. But theoretically, that's what it should be, so that strictly that you have to define. Otherwise, how it makes sense that by election the people can enact any laws? The philosophers and so on, moralists will say, oh, there's some moral judgment there which prevent them from, for example, the Germans should not have enacted, or Hitler should not have enacted, but he's sovereign in his domain, should not have enacted that. These persecution of other races, racism, but because where did you get that? So racism is bad. How do you know that racism is bad? You're going back to the same problem. So that's the reason all these will contain also the United Nations Charter and so on. Despite what is its fault, it's philosophically unsound. Well, you see, Trump can kick it away. He doesn't flex his muscle and kick it. He doesn't care. He can do it. But there's no authority above him. He believe that, and ultimately it has been enacted by agreement of states, of humans. None of them is referring to any divine authority. It's not nowhere stated these principles are derived from the Old Testament, New Testament, these articles, and so on, and there's absolute. No. They may argue, okay, it is the case of states and entities. States belong to certain religions and they may not share a general religion. Okay, in that case, it will be done by agreement and obviously and practice which goes over centuries. That's maybe in the international between states, it may be acceptable, and that's what but for Muslims, it's acceptable not because it has come from ancient generations, civilization, and old agreement and so on, because it's approved by the Prophet. The Prophet approved it, the version of international at his time. Like, for example, say messengers and ambassadors cannot be killed. They are exempt from, they have immunity. That's approved, divine approval. That's what for Muslim make it binding. But between states, the only way is to have just international treaties and agreement or well-established rules. And if someone violates, then the other states can gang against him and fight him legitimately. That's the only. But inside one state, where you have a king or a ruler or a parliament, then you have the dilemma ultimately developing one day. There will be factions developing another point of view and say, your point, where did you go to your point of view? Ultimately, it's the law of the jungle. And then you have conflicts and starting bloodshed.
I mean, you're seeing that right now. You can see that right now in terms of...
Is anything going to there? You may go a few decades, centuries, peacefully, until some conflict erupts.
Yeah, for example, after September 11th, in terms of permitting torture and the whole debacle around non-state actors and, the whole Guantanamo Bay.
They keep invention things and so on because they have no absolute frame of reference.
Ultimately, the only framework they have is expediency, whatever suits them at that moment in time.
Ultimately, that's if you go with sovereignty to its extreme, as defined here, making humans sovereign in that sense. The philosophers say, we expect humans to act rationally. That's what you expect, but the reality shows that not always is that the case. Ultimately, it will be then the stronger, the one who can enforce, will enforce himself.
Earlier on, you said the meaning of Siyadatul Ummah. Is this is just a linguistic construct in terms of just sovereignty of the nation? Just generally,
that's the Western. That's the Western. And
so basically, the Arabization of the West.
In case of constitutional monarchy, the sovereignty is divided half to the king and half to the people. Right? All of that scope has nothing. There's sovereignty in that sense is only to Allah, and nobody should even touch it. So any laws, in principle, that's that. If you want to remain Muslim, if you want to accept Islam, ma'asalama, bye-bye. But if you want to be Muslim, anything, it must be after a chain of argument going back to the divine sovereignty and what's been revealed. And if you have no revelation received, like people in Fatra and so on, then you have no other. You have to manage the affairs by rationalization, by taste, by whatever it is. No revelation has come and no accountability in Yawm al-Qiyamah on you on that. will be then if you make good choices, things which improve social cohesion and so on, you may have a good life, a relatively good life, and so on. If it's less, then it is less. But that is will have no import Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's the reason that people in Fatra will not be accounted. Because they say, we didn't receive any messenger, we don't know what you wanted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the reason for the people who didn't receive a messenger will have no accountability in that sense. So it's much deeper than just a shadow issue, parliament meeting and enacting laws. It isn't just enacting law haphazardly. What authority you have to enact law and what principle it goes back to. And these principles, you may say, oh, I can't use the reason for that. Islam says you can't use that. If you want to be Muslim, which is submitted to Allah, you regard Allah as the owner, the absolute sovereign, and yourself as a slave. You have to go to the master. But you do your best your best to get what the master has ordered. Trusting that what he has ordered is good, that's another issue. Or in any case, it's binding, even if it's not good for you. It may be punishing for you. It may be allowing things you insisted on, like Bani Israel, when they insisted to have a monarchy, and then ultimately, Allah permitted them, warning them clearly, read Samuel 1, warning them clearly that kings, maybe the first or second may be good ones, but kings ultimately will turn you into slaves and you will suffer and you will scream for help. I will not help you. Finish, game over. But he allowed it. Khalas, it was allowed. And it was the reason for their destruction. So their choice destroyed them. The beginning, it looks very lucrative. But ultimately, it ended in a catastrophe. But Allah is at liberty to allow it. You ask for your own demise, a catastrophe, and you insist, take it. He can say, no, I will not allow you. He could have said, but he did not. He did not. Why? Ask him Yawm al-Qiyamah if you want. But yeah, that's what had happened. That's in the book of Samuel. That's what history shows. The first couple of kings were quite reasonable. Talut, Shaul, Dawood, Sulaiman, and then it's downhill, highest possible speed after that, into the ultimate calamity and catastrophe. Yeah? Complete annihilation, leading to complete annihilation and damnation and curse, which persists until today, up and down, up and down. That's it, if you look at the history correctly. But who is the sovereign? Who allows or doesn't allow? Permission? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a fundamental principle. How to apply in practice? Only if a nation or majority of our people agree that is the way to go, and then they have sufficient power on earth, physical power, they are a majority, and they take the state power and enact that in the state. الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر. That's the way to go in the universe, in the real universe. But philosophically, creed-wise, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. You have to be clear about that. This is fundamental part of Tawheed, fundamental part of, let's say, what the meaning worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, enslaving yourself to Allah. ما خلقت الجن والإنس يعبدون إني أرى الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني, addressing Musa. And all the prophets will have statement in the Quran, ما أرسلنا من نبي إلا all prophets say أنه لا إله إلا الله فاعبدوه. Every prophet, all prophets, there's a summary of their message, stating the fundamental fact, and based on that, enslave yourself completely to him. That's the peak and the central point of Tawheed, not kissing graves and hugging the Prophet and taking barakah from him or circumambulating the Kaaba. That's all irrelevant. These are extended actions. They may express something, may express nothing. But that fundamental conviction, belief, and the fundamental response to it by absolute surrender and submission, enslaving oneself. That's it. If you don't have that, then forget about it. Then you have rejected the messenger. That's what the messenger has brought to you. The fine details, don't worry about the fine details. They come. They can't come anyway. They can't be. There's no way that Allah is obliged to even enforce any salah in a formalized way. We know from the story of Adam and Eve, from the first humans, they have only one injunction. There's not even an act. Don't come close to this tree. Otherwise, go around, do whatever you want. Nothing else. Just one commandment. That's all what was required. That's all the enslavement required from them. The acts which express enslavement. But they were supposed to be completely submissive, yes. And they were completely submissive until they violated that by their disobedience. Well, it's not that completely submissive that you have a salah, which is 5 times a day or 3 times or 500 times a day, or it contains standing or ruku' or prostrating and sujood and so on. No. It can be very well your salah is only sujood. Maybe another nation, their salah is just standing still. Another may be swinging themselves like the Jews in front of the, if it is the one ejected. Maybe their invention, but just assume it is the original law. No problem. Fine. Accept it. These are all the formalities, secondary. Problem when you get stuck, think this is the worship. That's not the worship. That's not the enslavement. Enslavement is the acceptance to be the slave and submission. That's it. Then various acts as ordered. From messenger to messenger, it may change. From generation to generation, may change, etc. That's the core. If that's clear, all issues. But we are discussing every detail so that even the dumbest of the dumb can understand every aspect. And that's the reason the whole chapter is being not wasted, but being clarifying this. Especially since the Wahhabi, they have these. We have a book saying. التوحيد أولا ثم الحاكمية. Responding to Sayyid Qutb, as if Hakimiyya is not Tawheed. Tawheed أولا meaning grave issues. That's the first for them. These mentally retards. So no wonder they will never find any way. They will never achieve anything really in progressing the Ummah or in progressing the world and improving civilization. No, they won't. They can't. They will never offer the Islam which will really revive the people, even at the individual level. No, forget about ruling and government and so on. Like individual Muslims in America. If they follow the Wahhabi, they will be going wavering right and left center, not really calling other Islam properly, having even effect around them and human beings in a positive way, because the starting point is a fallacy. The starting point is a fallacy. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so just so that the perceptive reader may recognize in this the full logical form of the Burhan at-Tamanu, the proof undermining that of mutual hindrance for the oneness of Allah, exalted is He, which we have elaborated in detail in matters in volumes 2 of this series. So that's the analogy that is given as part of 3, the point 3. Point 4, al-asalah, originality. Sovereignty exists independently. It has not received its supremacy from any prior or higher will.
Yeah.
Number 5, isma, infallibility. The theory of sovereignty tends to presume that the will of the sovereign is inherently legitimate and that its law is by default in conformity with the standards of truth and justice.
Otherwise, it's not an absolute sovereignty. It contradicts absolutely. Because if you say it is wrong and right, meaning you have another measure to measure. And that's the reason Iblis became a kafir, because he said, when he was ordered to make sujood to Adam, what did he say? Ana khayrun min. What does it mean, ana khayrun? I'm better than him. Meaning, because I'm better than him, I ought not to make sujood to him, and you command me to do, your command must be wrong. That's the meaning of it. You are wrong. Basically telling Allah Ta'ala, you are wrong. That's it. So he's making himself, putting himself in a position equal to Allah or above Allah, judging Allah's action. That cannot work, because Allah's injunctions, by necessity, by themselves, are right. Cannot be declared wrong. Otherwise, reason will collapse, will be upside down. That's nothing else. The same with expected that the acts of the state, the ruling the issue, and the royal edicts and so on are You cannot say the king is wrong. But since in reality, kings commit wrong and people have a revolution and so on, so they try to fix that by the king appoints the prime minister and the prime minister acts in behalf of the king. So if in an error, the error is the prime minister, not the king. So that didn't say the king owns the sovereign, but the one who governs and commits errors in that, because it contradicts, because as a human being, he makes errors, but you gave him sovereignty which doesn't deserve. Instead of saying, oh, no, he has no sovereignty. So then where is the sovereignty then? How can he issue orders and injunction? Islamic solution is that he has to refer to the revelation and show you his derivation. Or sure, a council will meet and make a derivation. As long as it looks proper, you are obliged to obey. Later on, maybe detect that was an error in derivation. No problem. We correct the error, go back to the source, and derive again. No problem. No harm done. Does it mean that what the Shura come to in conclusion, or the ruler come in conclusion, referring to Quran and Sunnah, is absolute? And no. But we know Quran and Sunnah cannot have an error. He made the error in derivation because it's human, and this is resolved by the issue that ijtihad is commendable and deserve reward. Deserve reward in any case. Multiple rewards in the case of you are right, and single reward just for the effort. So you are in the safe ground. You don't need to have a problem. You go there and drive. But you have to go there and drive. You can't just say, no, we just meet and discuss things rationally and how much benefits is there, how much harm and things like that.
In your analogy, that example you gave of Shaitan, in terms of his rejection and positing a reason for rejection, could it be argued that's similar in the way that the Madakhila, they say, just to try to hide, to say that we don't believe that the ruler may legislate by than what Allah has revealed, but he does, as long as he doesn't say it's superior to Islam.
Yeah, that's it. Superior or not superior? It's not superior. That's what means superior to Islam or inferior to Islam. It's not allowed to rule except what that Allah has revealed. Superior, inferior is irrelevant.
I mean, the rebuttal from that would be just the ayahs in their generality, not offering this.
No, it's clear, because what do you mean? He rules with not what Allah has revealed manifestly, like allowing usury banking, but he claims, I'm not claiming this superior this Islamic ruling, but this can be done. Is less? No, it can't be done. Then you have violated Allah's sovereignty. You have not enslaved yourself to Allah. So this is an act of kufr. And in that case, the question is how to keep, can he stay in power? No, he cannot. How to deal with it? Then obviously judicial process, etc., until he is shut out. Or if necessary, using force. If he resists by force, fighting resisting group. That's clear procedure in Islam how to do that. But they want to cut that short. That's it. So if someone of them is aware about this in a clear way, he's a munafiq kafir. His ruler is a kafir.
And then they obviously use kufr dun kufr and all this kind of stuff, which is...
And this one, just to get away from that. Mm-hmm. It's not really kufr taken out of Islam. No. It's clearly kufr taken out of the fold of Islam, definitely. Because it's rejecting Allah's command. It's making ta'qib on Allah Ta'ala, questioning Allah Ta'ala. Questioning is not possible. It's not possible rationally or not allowed Sharia-wise. When you say لا يسأل عما يفعل, he cannot be questioned for that what he do, meaning this is impossible in itself. But if someone does it, nevertheless, he is condemned. Both. This is the khabar form here have both commandment. You don't question Allah Ta'ala, and by the way, questioning is nonsensical. It will lead to infinite regress and problems which have no solution except absolute submission. Because he's the creator, and he created the system, and he's the one who injunction the system. They may synchronize with the system, they may asynchronize to a certain level, provided it doesn't break the principle of injustice, that he gives you an injunction which he knows that you are unable to do, and punish you for that. That will be injustice. That's impossible. That's never happened. But he can give you an injunction which is a bit heavy or heavier, but still executable, or soft and gentle, that's still acceptable. All of it has accepted as it is. As it is.
Okay, just I'll read it, the number 5 again. Somebody's got a question on it. So number 5, Isma, infallibility. The theory of sovereignty tends to presume that the will of the sovereign is inherently legitimate and that its laws is by default in conformity with with standards of truth and justice, not for any reason other than it proceeds from the sovereign's will. Thus, the theory attributes to the sovereign a form of infallibility in
That's a
judgment.
fiction, obviously. I mean, it's attributed to king and nations.
What do you mean by standards of truth and justice? Some kind of objective standard known to the divine? What is it? What is it?
Yeah, the divine commands and the divine creation is the standard, is the reference standard. There's no other standard, but it's just a reason. But when you make the action or the orders of the king themselves the standard, but we know that he's a human being out of flesh and he can make errors and so on. How do we measure that? So to make the law, his law, valid and must be obeyed, you attribute to him sovereignty, but it's contradicting the nature of the reality. That's the reason it's shirk to attribute to someone beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah.
Would this point refer to Allah's name Al-Haq? Because he both gives the right...
All of the names entail that. He's al-Haq, he's an absolute Haq in himself. So the argument is the following. Yeah. Allah allowed the hereditary monarchy to Bani Israel. It's clearly in the Quran, without going the discussion like in Samuel, but ابعث الأمريكا نقاتل في سبيل الله. He did not finish the long discussion and so on. Then he appointed Talut, and then they started disputing how he should become a king above us because he didn't have money, so they were greedy to have kingdom, not for jihad. Because we want a king because that's the best way to organize battle. Okay, that's what they claim, but that's not what they really intended. So when they got Talut, they objected. He was not one of the rich. So they objected. أن له الملك علينا. So the Prophet answered to them, he is having more knowledge and well-built body, so good for the fight. You are legally wanted for fight. Wallahu yu'ti mulkahu man yasha. Allah gives the kingdom he is the king. He gives the kingdom whoever he wants. So you have to shut up. Yeah. So he mentioned a specific reason because you claimed you wanted to fight the enemy. So I got you someone who is knowledgeable in the basta fil ilm, wajh al-jism, strong man. He's as big maybe as these other tribes, these Amalek, these Amalek. Netanyahu spoke about the Amalek. That's exactly the guys there. So he bodily and knowledge by meaning not just the knowledge of Torah, but knowledge in the fight and the techniques of war, and possibly also in the law. So he's suitable for the purpose you claim you want king for. And above that, Wallah yu'ti mulkahu man yasha. You shut up, even if he got a dwarf. Then you have to accept. So these people want to get away from it. That's the reason in the dialogue in Samuel, allegedly Allah is telling Samuel, because Samuel was upset. I think they objected to his leadership. Say, no, they don't reject you. They don't want me to rule over them. They don't want me to be their king. That's the reality what they want. So Samuel, don't be unhappy. It's not you the address of their attack. I am the one being attacked. And they did that before when I saved them from Egypt and they go to Golden Calf. As I mentioned all this. Read Samuel to see what has happened in detail. Quran, they glossed over that because Quran is not in this business. Establish the principle and just give you bits in history to clarify things. That's it. And they show that they are lying in their claim. Big liars. And they never wanted to do fighters. They wanted to have kingdom. And each one of them wanted for himself, waiting that he would be appointed king. Okay, so that's it.
Okay.
So if Allah is not the standard, because he's absolute and al-haq, then where you are going to get a standard? Nowhere. Where? Human perception, human feeling, that's finite, that's limited, that's on earth. There's no guarantee that even your perception and feeling is valid in the whole galaxy, let alone in the whole universe. This is a local experience, the local development, the evolution here in this location with this condition. Elsewhere, it may develop differently. Standard may be differently. We don't know. But definitely something contingent, final, in an enclosed universe, which has certain a set of law which could be thought differently, and the set of initial conditions could have been differently. Clearly a contingent universe. That's it. And if you deny that, say, no, this is all necessary, nature is necessary, it has, so the universe have no reason, no mind. The best what you have is our mind and our reasoning, fine. Then you are the standard. And then in a society, people need maybe to enforce laws, and then they have to sell this fiction. So everyone obeys. But someday people will recognize, this was a fiction. Actually, the king can make errors, the community can make errors, and it is the only law I can see in the universe, the law of the jungle. So if I have enough strong muscles, I will wrestle what I want. All these laws that you should not kill anybody, that's just for the weak ones. I can kill whomever I want, provided I'm doing it skillfully that I can't get caught. Or I rally some gangster with me and kill everyone and become the ruler. Mafia state. That's it. Women, you should not touch the woman of other men and not covet your wife. That's to protect the majority of weak men. I am a strong man. I can fertilize 1,000 women. So who prevent me? Just kill the husband, get that woman. That's the law of the jungle. That's how it works in the jungle. But they want to escape from that, having something like reasonable organized society. So then you invent these fictions from your imagination. Or you are forced to invent it if you believe the universe is matter. There is no higher reason, no higher authority, no divine being. It is eternal. That's contradictory, but it's as an atheist, you have to assume that. And then you cannot have any argument except there must be some reasonable social agreement. Yeah. People may comply for a certain time, but there will be odd guys jumping out and they will try to flex their muscle and do whatever they want. They become outlaw, and the society may succeed in catching most of them and execute them or put them in prison. But maybe one day one of these outlaws will jump and become the ruler, and the outlaw become law, and the old law will be abrogated, and so on. That's how it works in the physical reality. Okay. So all of these theory of sovereignty, if it's attributed to someone who is not worthy by his own essence, is haqq in himself, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fail and will contradict itself and end in nowhere. But it may work for some time. So courts have to work, people have to go to work, the street has to be safe for some time. So it cannot be eternally in a law of jungle. So people agree on something. The general people are average power, average capabilities, and so on. So they agree. The usual social law is the law of the mediocre. The extreme ones, they may start thinking, that's all just an agreement of the people, because the mediocre want to protect themselves by being organized in a society, use the strength of a society. But if I can't get away, that's what the anarchist, the extreme anarchist in the 19th century said, murder is okay, it's no problem. The only problem, you must be ready to be, if you're caught, they will cut your head, fine. If you are ready for that, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with it intrinsically. It's a social, but it's nothing called immoral, is it? So social norms are not having anything deeper morality or transcendent morality. It's just agreement between many people who are average, and they thought that's the best for us to protect our life and recognize that we cannot fight all odds single, so we agree, and then anyone jumping out of line, we punish him and declare him to be outlaw. That's what the anarchists said. And that over centuries and millennia, they attributed that to a divine being. That's what the atheists said, attributed some divine to give it a bigger authority. In reality, there's nothing. There's no divine. Everything is a law of the jungle. That's the only law. Might is right. We can do it, do it. So it goes into a never-ending circle, attributing sovereignty to a non-divine being. And divine being is the only one. And if you deny the divine being, then you will not be able to give any consistent and definition of sovereignty, which is sufficiently persuasive to persuade everyone who shares that belief. So you have to have a belief which is strong and firm and well established. Otherwise, it will not work in practical life. But we're not talking about practical life. We're talking about individual, yourself, myself, thinking what's my place in the universe first. Then we think about society and managing the state and affairs. And what's my relation to universe? If there's a God, no God. As far as God established, he's the ultimate sovereign. Okay, he sent messenger. Yeah, we have messenger, this and this and this, and we have absolute evidence for this one specifically. That's it, khalas. We end there. And that's my reference frame. Now, if many people embrace that and have sufficient physical power, majority, or overcoming a domain by conquest or whatever historic situation, then they are obliged, if they believe in that really, to establish that rule and rule by it. Otherwise, you will end in circularity and or appealing to some mysterious moral sentiment or something like that, which is religion. Can't try to say that certain moral values, they have nothing to do with utility and so on, they're fundamental. And the example he discusses is that fulfilling contracts. All humans essentially agree that fulfilling contracts is necessary. And his argument is again from utilitarian. If we do not do that, then nobody can trade, it's again utilitarian. So he was not successful in claiming that there's absolute moral values coming from reason, what you call practical reason, praktische Vernunft. No, there is none. In the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his commands are right and correct by necessity, because he is necessarily existing and he is perfect and sovereign. So he's the definition of right and wrong. He is the right and anything less than that is the wrong. Anything outside him is the wrong. And Allah huwa al-haq. He is the truth in himself in every respect. The true existence, every other existence is just a shadow, like a shadow of the real existence. Everything is it. So how come the shadow will go back to argue with the origin? And how we have said in the discussion about the divine being, how can the branch argue with the stem and thinks I can stay aloof when the stem is cut? It doesn't work. We discussed that already. It's a rational argument, is very clear. That's the reason there's the fundamental problem of is the fundamental problem in our moral, not necessarily the proof by itself that is false atheism. You don't refute atheism by the moral argument. No, that's wrong. So atheism will deliver some kind of social agreements which people declare to be morality and so on, but it's nothing beyond that. Be happy with that, admit that, and that's it. That's possible, but no more than that. But there's not enough refutation of atheism. No, refutation would be to show that contradict the necessity of reason, contradict the shape of the reality in which we are. That's all created and contingent, and it's impossible to be its totality necessarily existing or anything like that. That's the proof that the God exists. A free agent, free sovereign, a real sovereign, free agent acting by free will. And then the system of reason dictates, because he's necessarily existing, it's only one, it is undividable, it cannot procreate, etc. All of these things we discussed shortly there. And can be proven. All of these then follow by necessity from there. So there's nothing. That's the ultimate. No more. Nothing more behind that. And this part of the meaning included in La ilaha illallah. So the immediate action of seeing this truth and establishing it with certitude, with whatever evidences you have, either by fitrah or seeing it a complicated philosophical argument or a complicated physiological and biological argument, or another going the way of epistemological and logical, absolute, whatever way you have established that, then the reaction will be he must be the absolute sovereign. So any command come from him must be accepted and submit to it. You must enslave yourself to him, even theoretically, even if no command has come. The moment you establish there's only this one divine with this attribute, you have to submit and surrender. Is there really any command? Oh, check. Is there any message I didn't receive myself? I don't claim that I received from any commandment or something like that. But some people claim they received. Now let's verify if they are really prophets or not. Seek evidence of prophethood, which also reach the level of proof. That's the way to go. Straightforward. Any diversion on effort will not get you anywhere. And from that, follow what ما دام يحكم الله عليكم الكافرون الظالمون الفاسقون. No escape دائرة الحكم. But understood properly, not like the Khawarij. We will discuss the Khawarij. Why they mistake? They mistake the confused types of hukum which are exercised by humans, like fatwa, like a judicial ruling, like and so on, arbitration, all of that, with what Allah has revealed, which must be judged with. What Allah revealed is that the material you use to derive the human judgment and action. It is the source, is the reference frame. Khawarij confuse that. And we'll come to that. And Ali bin Talib argued them in a very simple-minded way. When we entered the masjid and sounded La hukma illa lillah, he had a mushaf, the Kufi mushaf in front of him. And then he knocked on the masjid, talk. They say, well, did you lose your mind? This is just skin and ink. It cannot talk. Say, exactly. But we are the one who makes talk. And that's not what you're saying, La hukma illa lillah. What you mean is that the Quran must talk by himself. It doesn't work. يستنطقه الرجال. The men, the humans, have to extract from him the ruling. And this requires reading, deep reading, understanding, not shallow understanding. And it can be happen in arbitration by appointing arbitrator. It can happen by a scholar sitting and giving fatwa. It can happen by a judge appointed by authority or agreed upon by the two parties. Because most judgments in Islam, most judges at the time of Islam, or many of them, were chosen by the people between themselves. There was no state appoint judges in a few cases. And most of the time, it's just the wali or the governor of certain area is also having the judicial power. Later on, they separated that and structured that further. And the moment two parties agree, we go to this judge and agree on his ruling and so on, then his ruling will become binding for them as an arbitrator and so on. But it has to be, these are the ones who read from the Quran, let the Quran talk. Because he just, as it is there, as we refer to us, it's just a skin and ink. But humans have to read it and understand it and deduct from it. Okay?
Okay, excellent. Okay, just continuing with the text. So that was number 5, finishing the Dastasiri attributes to the sovereign a form of infallibility and judgment. Continuing, these then are the features of sovereignty, a supreme and commanding authority that, bullet point 1, rules exclusively, associating no one in its rule. Its will is law, and its directives are binding legislation. Point 2, reigns supremely, acknowledging no authority above or equal to it. Next point, exists independently, deriving its legitimacy from no other will. Next point, possesses sacrosanct rights, which are not subject to forfeiture or statute of limitations. and final point here, is infallible, such that whatever issues from it is taken as truth and justice. Can any Muslim truly doubt that these attributes are fitting only for Allah? Exalted and sublime is He, and then that the term siyada, sovereignty, in fact corresponds precisely with certain meanings connoted by the term rububiyah, lordship.
Lordship, yes.
A clear majority of Islamic thinkers, among the scholars of usul al-fiqh and others, have explicitly affirmed that sovereignty is restricted and exclusively and absolutely to the Sharia, with no exceptions whatsoever. Some among them have even stated that no hukm exists prior to the coming of the Sharia, and that the rational intellect possesses no independent legislative authority whatsoever. And this is indeed the truth, firmly established by decisive rational and scriptural proofs, such that it is impermissible to believe otherwise. Among those who upheld this position from the early tradition are Ibn Hazm, especially in his major work on legal theory, Al-Ahkam fi Usul al-Ahkam, Al-Amidi, Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, Al-Asnawi, Al-Shawkani, and Ibn al-Qayyim. We have previously, so regarding the approach and thought of Amidi, you can consult Bernard Weiss's book. So Al-Amidi was actually covered in one of our audio series, which is yet to be published some time ago. Okay, we have previously established decisive proofs for the doctrine of Tawheed at-Tashri' wal-Hakimiyya. That is, the affirmation that ultimate and supreme sovereignty belongs solely to the Sharia. Nevertheless, there exists additional proofs that further reinforce the certainty and inclusiveness of this principle and illuminate its deeper details and finer dimensions. Okay, so that concludes this chapter.
Al-Amidi, for example, says when he says what usul fiqh is, that it deals with ahkam. And the ahkam have various fundamental components. First, who is the hakim? Who is the original hakim? And what is the hukum? And who is the mahkum alayh? Who is the one under hukum? So say, concerning al-hakim, you just have one sentence and never come back to the volume. It's a big volume, the book. Al-hakim is Allah. Period. Full stop. Bye. No more discussion of who is the hakim. For all ahkam and all usul ahkam, al-hakim is Allah. It comes back to him. That's it. Then he takes what mahkum bihi, anwa' al-hukum, and so on. All these details come later. Then a complete volume. Sources of hukum, sources of evidences. He has a chapter with ijma' and ends wavering, as we discussed in halaq, the series, which is, I think, already all of it is in the internet or still coming bit by bit. I think it's maybe 40, 50 sessions or something like that.
It's not on the internet yet. Al-Amidi isn't, though. It's just still just on OneDrive.
Yeah. So discusses the form do, is it for obligation or desirability? All this is part of usul fiqh, but the fundamental point, who is the hakim? Who the hukm originates from? Only a small paragraph. It's ijma' al-Muslimin, as clear from Quran and Sunnah by necessity that the hakim is Allah. خلاص, he never comes to this point again because it's dispatched, it's finished, without even any expansion that we have, because it's so obvious from Quran and Sunnah, it doesn't make any sense otherwise, anything else. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone want to comment or anything? Abu Mahab, if you want to unmute, you can. You can unmute. Far away. Can't hear you yet, Barf.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Professor. So you stressed upon the fact that the reference frame needs to be referring back to Allah and His Messenger.
Allah, essentially, Allah is the hakim, is the absolute hakim, the sovereign. Yeah.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, accepting this hukum, whether it is a mufti or a judge or a ruler or a legislator, accepting their rule, whether accepting the rule or not does not necessitate rejecting the rule of Allah, right?
No. We discussed this can be ijtihad, can be wrong, but we can correct it later. But their ruling must be rejected if referred to somebody else than Allah and the Messenger. If you say, for example, that's what Ibn Hazm advised a common man, who said, everyone must do ijtihad. Say, how can a common man illiterate to engineer. Say simple. He asked everyone around him who is the most knowledgeable man in our area, up to maybe, let's say, 3-day travel, because you cannot ask the people to travel more than 3 days. Will be beyond human capacity of most people. Okay. And he goes to this person, ask him, I have this Sharia issue at this point. Tell me what is the ruling of Allah and His Messenger about that. Tell me, you are responsible for it. So if I tell him, Malik said, he said, I'm not asking you about Malik. Tell me what you believe is the ruling of Allah's Messenger. That's all ijtihad is need for Ammi, and he can ask this question, even
Absolutely.
if he was able to. Yeah, that's
Okay,
it.
absolutely. But the question comes then, how can we understand the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ, he said to one of the companions sent to some people, if they asked you about a certain hukum, don't give them the hukum of Allah, but give them the hukum of yourself, because you don't know if you make the good hukum.
No, this is not in the comment. That's in the battlefield when you people of hustle resist and say, we come down, open the doors by agreement. And say,
Yes.
or we accept your hukum, the hukum of Allah in ourselves. Tell them, I don't know the hukum of Allah in your specific case, what is it? But I'll give you the hukum according to my best ijtihad. Still, the company is obliged to apply what Allah and His Messenger has revealed. You see? But the people tell him, we come to the hukum of Allah. Yeah?
Yes.
Come down. Say, no, I can't give you guarantee that's hukum of Allah. You come down on my hukum.
Okay, but his hukum in this case is
that's
not
for him his obligation. That's independent from that. But he doesn't give the people of Hassan, come, I will give you the hukum of Allah.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. Independent of accepting this hukum or not, or rejecting it.
That's something else. Accepting it is something else.
Okay.
That's what he would, the hukum he offers cannot violate what Allah's Messenger has given, because it matters another nation. Now we are in a state of war. What agreement we can do? And we cannot do. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
In the case of Bani Qurayza, for example, let's give an example. That's before this injunction. This injunction is later. But Bani Qurayza, they said, we come down on the hukum of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, because Sa'd ibn Mu'adh was most likely, he was their ally in Jahiliyyah, and most likely he was grown between them. So they thought he would be soft like Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul was soft with Bani Qaynuqa' Bani Nadir. They escaped because of his intermediation. Yeah? And then he came and asked, I will give my ruling. And ask the Bani Qurayza, you will accept? You say yes. Allah said, do you accept my ruling when I do? This is an agreement. This is like an international interaction. It's not judging inside the domain, judging with people outside the domain, which is ending the state of war.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
then the hukum he pronounced is actually what the Old Testament ordered the Jew to do with others. What he said. That's killing the fighter and taking the women and children into her. That's in Deuteronomy. You can check it. I think
From the Old Testament. Yes.
And the report says, Mr. Allah say, you judge between them with the ruling of the king above 7 heavens. Most likely the narrator did not complete, as they know from their own Torah. Because Sa'd ibn Mu'adh most likely was brought up by them, and he attended their schools and things like that. So he knows that. And they cannot complain. That's the hukum you would have applied to others, is being applied now to you. That's the reason for this specific, apparently harsh hukum. And the reason for Allah said this is the ruling of the king above 7 arqa'ah. Not meaning in this case only. This case is a matter of agreement. It's an agreement between two states. But it is also that what was in the Torah. So most likely the narrative did not complete, as they may know in their Torah.
So
it's not necessarily valid now. For example, in a people of Hassan, you come and you negotiate with them. They say, okay, we keep sovereign in our area and so on. Keep independent. You can offer them, you be peaceful, never fight with us. And never fight anybody else without approval, essentially like a confederate. But we do not regard you as a confederate, complete confederate. So you can have your usury and everything. We have nothing to do with that. But in return, because you're not allowed to fight anybody else, for example, you're allowed to have a standing army, just only local militia, things like for peacekeeping internally. For that, we do the external protection. You pay us maybe this joint jizya for the whole state. The state transfer to our treasury this amount per year of their your income, or depending upon the persons, they estimate something like that. This and this and this. That's a hukum. Based on that, the state of war ended and semi-confederate. Well, generally, the issues of confederation is spelled out in some detail in Najran. Najran became confederate. That's the reason also for a part of the confederation must be no usury, because you cannot have interaction and buying and selling with people freely if they are doing usury. The currency system must be the same. That's meaning of prohibition of usury, because usury is connected to the currency system, the true currency system of gold and silver and the other commodities and so on. But I don't go into define detail. That's what had happened with Najran later, after these injections to the people. If you offer that, you can say this is the ruling of Allah's messenger. You become a member of the confederation. They say, no, we don't want to. We want to be a little bit further away. Okay, then you agree with something.
But ultimately, if they did not accept this hukum, they are not necessarily rejecting the hukum of Allah, right?
No, they are fighting. You are fighting them. They are in siege Hassan. Monsieur, we are not talking about Muslims.
Let's suppose that they are Muslim. Let me give you an example.
No, it can't be. You can't fight a Hassan Muslim and siege them.
Let me give you, for example, when ISIS fought Syrian factions, when they come to tahkim, ISIS, for example, the judge of ISIS, he gives a hukum, and then the Syrian groups, they reject it. But the ISIS judge,
that's another issue. That
says you are rejecting the hukum of Allah in this case.
No, this is different, completely different. This is baghi between Muslims. The other Muslims should step in and solve the problem, but they didn't do. The whole situation is messy.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If the Syrian groups rejected the hukum of the ISIS judge, it doesn't mean that they rejected the hukum of Allah necessarily.
Not necessary. Maybe not. What is depending on the intention. We say your ijtihad is wrong. You got the facts. You are biased. You are not independent. We don't accept you. That's all objection to the judge, not to the hukum itself.
I see.
You are confusing the issue there. What I'm saying is that when the people of fortification refuse to open, and there's no way you can overcome them except by negotiation, say, okay, we'll accept the ruling that you give us the ruling of Allah. Say, I don't know the ruling in your specific case now, but I offer you the best I have and my companion, and give you the covenant in my name and my companion.
Okay.
Because the Messenger say, فإنك لا تعلم أن تصيب حكم الله فيهم. So you don't give the dhimma, the covenant that of Allah. So if you break, or if a problem happens, then you are not breaking the dhimma of Allah and His Messenger. You're breaking your own dhimma, which is grave, but less grave than breaking the dhimma of Allah. Breaking the dhimma of Allah is an act of kufr. Breaking your own dhimma is a crime. Could be kufr, could be not kufr. That's all. Don't use this phrase.
Okay.
So it's a cautious step. Not the حكم Allah and His Messenger. That's what Sa'd ibn Mu'adh said to the Quraysh. Yes. He assured that both parties will accept, settle the score. Say, حكمي فيهم, حكمي. He did not even say as it's in the Old Testament, but they know. He is brought up by them, educated possibly by them. Possibly he even speak Hebrew. All of these things may be possible there, or Syriac and so on. People in Medina, where many of them were educated by the Jews. Some even stayed there until they become adults and became scholars. So he took that from the Old Testament, but say حكمي فيهم.
So I'm understanding that it is just a cautious step, because otherwise you don't want to make any assurance that this is indeed the hukm of Allah, because you don't know whether
because they say don't give the covenant in the name of Allah and so on.
Yes.
I guarantee it's the name of Allah, because you don't know if that's the hukm of Allah and it's binding on Allah. Don't do that. Do it or binding on you.
Yes. Okay.
If any mistake happens, that is, you are the guilty one. Not guilt and insult cannot be attributed to Allah and His Messenger. That's it.
Yes. Understood.
It's not matter of accepting. In the case of break, yeah.
Yes. I think it's becoming clear. So it's a cautious step, right? Yes.
And also the judge, the proper judge, when you said This is the ruling according what I believe Allah and Messenger. He said not the hukm Allah in this specific case as derived from Sharia. He doesn't pronounce his hukm as if he's representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
He's representing a state. أحكم فيهم بكذا كذا كذا. Even the judge, the Muslim judge, will not say that هذا حكم الله في المسألة. He will not, unless it's قطعي and he is absolutely certain. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's clear, inshallah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. But you, as a hakim, as a mufti, should refer only to Allah and His Messenger. Even if you are mistaken, that's a matter of ijtihad and khata. So the army should ask the one and say, so if he tell you this Malik or Shafi'i, I'm not asking about Malik and Shafi'i. Is that what you believe? Is the ruling what you believe came from Allah and Messenger according to your best ijtihad and best knowledge? It may be what Malik also said, maybe Abu Hanifa, it doesn't matter. It could be this, but is it that what you, according to your conviction? If he doesn't guarantee that, then ignore him. That he is not a alim. He's a muqallid. He's ignorant. So that's it. It's a very simple procedure. You can educate everyone. Even if say Malik says something, say, are you sure that? But what Malik said is that the hukm of Allah's Messenger. If you are convinced, you are following Malik on evidence, or you believe that somehow, and you can answer for that Yawm al-Qiyamah, okay, I take it. Simple. This way, if that's implemented by all Muslims, then all these madhahib and these frozen madhahib will disappear. Will be just go. Good scholars, and he picks from here and here according to the situation. And the scholars will become independent, will be forced to become at least muttabi'. They don't need to be ijtihad, they do ittiba'. You check the various points of view, see what seems to be the strongest evidence, and follow by evidence. That's it. That he tell you, that's okay. And it is, by the way, it is also what Abu Hanifa and Fulan said. That's fine. That's good. That's great. That gives you more confidence that your derivation is correct and your understanding is more fair. Because nobody has absolutely infallible understanding. We know that. Neither the Ammi nor the scholar. Yeah. That goes without saying. But it cannot be that you're answering Malik said that. No, I'm not asking what Malik said. I ask you what Allah and the Messenger judge it according to your best knowledge. That's it. I cannot ask you to be infallible. No. Good?
Yes. Jazakallah.
Okay, continuing with the next chapter, chapter 3, page 15. The hukm only belongs to Allah. Definitive evidences from the Quran, the prophetic Sunnah, the consensus of the companions, and even sound reasoning all affirm that sovereignty belongs solely and absolutely to the Sharia. In the Quran, there are numerous verses indicating that siyada mutlaqah, absolute sovereignty in the cosmos, in life, and in human beings, is the exclusive right of the revealed law. Among these texts is the saying of the Exalted, blessed are his names, and exalted are his attributes, relating the infallible, comprehensive, and definitive statement of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. All those who worship instead of him are mere names. You and your fathers have invented names for which Allah has sent down no sanction. The hukm belongs to Allah alone, and he orders you to worship none but him. Innil hukmu illa lillah. Amar Allah.
لا تعبدوا إلا إياه. In order you not to enslave to anybody except him. Remove the word worship, put enslave yourself. So,
and he orders you to worship.
Here meaning the sovereignty, the ultimate reference for him.
This is the true faith, though most people do not realize it. And that's Surah 12:40. If the intended meaning of the phrase, he orders you to enslave none but to him, enslave to none but him, is the narrowly and restrictively understood as to be narrowly and restrictively understood as do not direct any acts of ritual worship or devotional rites except to Allah, then such an understanding would be consistent with the rudimentary, backward, and limited comprehension of Yusuf alayhi salam's two prison companions, and likewise with the degenerate and primitive interpretation of the Wahhabi sect, and which has effectively consigned its intellect to retirement. According to such an interpretation, ibadah, worship, refers solely to limited collection of ritual acts, bowing, prostration, prayer, fasting, erecting places of prayer, offering sacrifices and oblations, lighting candles, burning incense, and dispensing alms and vows, and the like. These acts are to be directed exclusively to Allah without any partner. They are not to be directed to any other, and this is because he has commanded it. in his capacity as a sole possessor of hukum, that is, as a sovereign, as the exclusive sovereign. He has a sole prerogative of command, and he orders you to worship none but him. Thus, his worship, even in this narrowly defined sense, the directing of those rites and rituals acts to him, and his monotheization by restricting those acts to him, is not the original basis, but rather a branch that stems from his exclusive sovereignty and authority in judgment. If he had commanded that some of those acts be directed to another, insofar as they are abstract actions, obedience to that command would have been obligatory. Indeed, this did occur in some instances, such as when he commanded the angels to prostrate before the father of mankind, Adam. Obedience is the foundation, while the acts and rites of worship, what are designated as acts of worship, and the exclusivity of Allah in receiving them constitute the branch. The direction of these actions to him and their restriction to him alone is not necessitated by empirical perception or rational necessity, but it is an act of obedience to his command.
Exactly. That's if we define worship or ibadah, this collection of acts, which is a faulty definition. But if we take that, then it is only can be directed only to him because he is the sovereign and he ordered that. But if he ordered to direct to someone else or allow, it will be like I gave the example of ordering the angel to prostrate to Adam. Yeah.
So
then in that case, because his command is taken out of being an act of worship, taken to be just an act of respect. But we know that's wrong on other grounds. But even if you go to that stupid Wahhabi extreme.
So basically, subordinated to it's a branch that's subordinate to the.
But if we take Allah ta'budullah, enslave yourself to him, then everything is clear. Then really, ibadah is enslaving to him, just recognizing that sovereignty and responding to it by acceptance. So, these idols you worship and so on, they have no authority, they are nonsense and so on. God commanded to enslave to nobody but him, meaning nobody should be regarded as sovereign or submission to him, submitted to except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To him, anything else is not permitted. So obedience, absolute obedience, slavery is only to Allah. How that is expressed with sujood, not sujood, is not relevant. Just I accept that and I surrender. That's based on the belief that he is the only sovereign. So he's the only sovereign. What's the reaction? We acknowledge that rationally by necessity, yes. My reaction, I fall on my face intellectually and say, I submit. Then I am obedient. Then I am al-abid. That's it. No need to mention lighting candles or sujood or ruku or all this nonsense. No need for it. The Wahhabi. So if you take even the Wahhabi extreme position, again, is based on the sovereignty. If you don't take it, then abudu is just a sovereign expression of accepting the sovereignty. Because just believing in it is not enough. You may believe, but I'm not submitting. I'm not doing any action based on that, any internal action. But now the acceptance and surrendering internally is the fundamental one. The moment is that happening, then the external action will obviously follow normally, unless there's a disobedience or sin and things like that. Okay?
Continuing. Had he not issued a command regarding them, none of it would have been obligatory. And if he had commanded that any part of it be directed to another, obedience to that command would have been obligatory. Similarly, if he had permitted that any portion of it be directed to another, then nothing of it would have been prohibited. In such a case, those acts would not be acts of ibadah at all, nor would it be permissible in principle to refer to them as worship directed to that other. Rather, they would be categorically something else. For example, if he commands or permits prostration to another, then such prostration would be a gesture of honor or greeting, not an act of worship. This is the truth indicated by the verse, and no other understanding can possibly be derived from it. And if what is intended is ibadah, is its broad and comprehensive meaning, that is obedience.
So depending upon Yusuf, is obviously the guys around there are simple-minded. Most likely he meant with the word ibadah, most likely he meant these simple acts and so on. Even there, he is correct. They should not be directed as the recognition of sovereignty except to Allah. Unless he allows to direct them to someone else, then it's not ibadah, it's something else. That's what they assume, really, because the people around with Yusuf but they may be sophisticated. The society may be very sophisticated philosophically, to a certain level. Then it is then clearly don't enslave yourself except to him. This means no obedience, no absolute obedience is except to him, and you have that. That's it. Yeah. So both meaning are covered in that. Both situation of the addressee, depending on the level of the addressee. If they're shallow-minded, the address is correct. If they are deep-minded, the address is correct. And in both cases, it means absolute sovereign is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ibadah should be submission to him.
And what is intended by ibadah is its broad and comprehensive meaning. That is, obedience, submission, humility, and subjugation. Then the phrase, he orders you to worship none but him, may be understood in two ways. Firstly, as a logical consequence, application and clarification of the practical operative dimension of the phrase, Innil hukmu illa lillah, the hukm belongs to Allah alone, which constitutes the epistemological and theoretical dimension. For obedience is the natural, most reflexive, and automatic response to the belief that al-hukm belongs exclusively to Allah. Second, as a transformation of the necessity of obedience to Allah, majestic is his glory, from being a rational and conceptual necessity anterior to any specific command or prohibition into a hukm sharia, juridical ruling, whose observance or neglect entails reckoning, followed by reward or punishment. Thus, obedience to Allah is not only obligatory by necessity of reason and good by the judgment of reason, it is also obligatory by the address of the lawgiver, and subject to divine commendation and reward for compliance or divine censure and punishment for failure.
Yeah, so there's no contradictions. Someone say, how can say, worship me, surrender to me, this itself, the surrender is dictated by necessity of reason, was already done. No. Here he said, I know that you know that by necessity of reason, but I'm telling you this surrender will be accounted Yawm al-Qiyamah, adding further information. Okay? So there's no circularity. At first, it looks like circular. How do we know that we have to worship only you? We must obey you, but obey to you is not commanded yet. No, that's what is commanded, is that essentially what's saying, I remind you of the necessity of reason, that I am the absolute sovereign. That's what established by La ilaha illallah. Now, absolute submission and obedience is the natural, logical reaction to that. No other reaction makes any sense. But more than that, I will be questioning that Yawm al-Qiyamah and rewarding and punishing according to it. I mean, that's the new information. So it looks like a command, but it's not a command. It's two reports. One confirming that when La ilaha illallah, the other one said there will be accountability on this issue. Yeah. In form, it looks like as a command, but it's not really a command in the strict sense. Because a command which must be obeyed, it says, but the principle of obedience must be established before. Well, this is what we say, obey. But how do we know that we have to obey you? Because of necessity reason. But I'm saying, using the form of command to tell you they will be accounting Yawm al-Qiyamah. Is actually describing a complex two statement in a form of simple command. But this is more philosophical side. Don't worry about it.
Okay, continue with the text.
So if you look deeper, you see that's what is it. Because that's the reason it says, إنه لا إله إلا الله فاعبدوه. That's all messengers say that. And for Musa, addressing him in the singular. إني أنا الله لا إله أنا فاعبدني. But for all messengers mentioned in other ayahs in the Quran. ما بعث من رسول من قبلك إلا قال لقومه أو شيء. I don't remember the exact wording of the ayah. So every messenger, every prophet said that to his people. La ilaha illallah, there's only one deity, only one creator, necessarily existing, and he is the one who created for himself, so you are owned by himself, by him, not to anybody else, and he is your supreme master, and this dictates then, if he is supreme master and you have activity, you have to, if he issue any specific command, you have to obey. General, that's from La ilaha illallah, you have to obey, dictates by necessity of reason. Then we say فَعْبُدْنِي, enslave yourself to me, obey, submit me, obey me unconditionally, is meaning essentially this obedience will be questioned Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's not a command, or to looks and be in a command form. That's an abbreviation. In a command form, it contains many other meanings. This one specifically, it contains other meaning than just being a command. Yeah. Otherwise, it will be circular, internal circularity. It is not a circularity, but a form of command is used to express that this will be questioned Yawm al-Qiyamah. Based on the principle of La ilaha illallah, which enshrined the national necessity to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, factually, this will be an issue which will be matter of punishment and reward Yawm al-Qiyamah, not a philosophical issue which can be discussed in universities only. No, that's not. There are repercussions based on that.
So the ayah you are referring to is in Surah Anbiya, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونَ.
فاعبدون، هذا هو الموسى specifically إني أنا الله لا إله أنا فاعبدني وابدأ أن أقم الصلاة لذكري. Clarifying
As
that
a
Salah
single
is to
person.
remember Allah. It's not ibadah. It's something
Yes.
else. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So this is the Surah Al-Anbiya. This is clear. All messengers have this message. It looks like فاعبدون, I command them to, but actually it is not amr in the strict sense. It is having another meaning.
Okay, continuing with the text. The statement of the exalted, obey Allah, e.g. in Surah 4:59, though it appears in an imperative form in many places throughout the Quran, it is not in reality a true command. Otherwise, it could be asked, how does one come to know what obedience to Allah is, know that obedience to Allah is obligatory? Is it due to a prior command? But that would necessitate another prior command.
So there will be higher previous command ad infinitum or circular. It's not like that. It is actually, there will be accountability on this issue of Qiyamah. This issue is clear by necessity of reason immediately by itself. No need to command to give that. Just know this fact and you know immediately he's the absolute sovereign. So if he commands, he must be obeyed unconditionally. But this is only theory. You can discuss that academically. Nice theory. Allah does say, enslave yourself to me. But you are knowing you are already a slave. So meaning that will have repercussion Yawm al-Qiyamah. It will be questioned about that Yawm al-Qiyamah. There will be hisab and thawab. That's it meaning with it. It's now hukum shar'i now. That was dictated by rational necessity from La ilaha illallah is now becoming an issue of accountability Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's hukum shar'i. Do and don't do. I will praise you and reward you, or I will condemn you and punish you. Or you are worthy of condemnation at least and punishment. At least because condemnation, Allah can forego it if He wants. He's not obliged. But the other one is obliged on him because it's a promise. Okay, clear? That's it. Just a philosophical point. Forget about it if you don't understand it.
Okay, continue with the text. The truth is that this expression contains two implicit declarations, such that it is as though He, majestic is His glory and exalted is His station, has said, you already know by necessity of reason that my obedience, which is obedience that is absolute and unconditional and is it is rationally obligatory and inherently good, as befits those who possess reason. I am merely reminding you of this. Furthermore, now I inform you that in addition to this rational necessity, I am requesting the obedience from you explicitly, for I created you for that purpose, and I shall hold you accountable for it.
Exactly.
And there shall be praise, divine approval, and reward for obedience in the form of absolute felicity, everlasting bliss, and eternal delight, all of which are sought by every rational being. Reproach, condemnation, punishment for disobedience, from which there is no escape nor deliverance, and eternal fire and everlasting misery, from which every rational soul should strive to be spared.
Yeah.
That's
so
the absolute...
when the ayah says أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم, أطيعوا Allah is in the same sense. It's not a command. It's a reminding of these two facts. Remember La ilaha illallah, which means I am the absolute sovereign, and the necessity is that, but they will be accountable to Qiyamah, that issue. That's not a command. It looks like a command. It's not a command. Because you can say, how can I obey it? What is the previous command of me to obey and then go to infinite regress? But أطيعوا الرسول is genuine. Yeah. We are ordered to obey the messenger. Who is giving the order? The one who deserves obedience by necessity and will account for it Yawm al-Qiyamah. And in that case, because the messenger of is not a divine sovereign and so on, and another place say, Allah, meaning I guarantee that the commands of the messenger are my commands. He may be fallible originally in the origin of the creation, but because I appointed his messenger, he is infallible in his commands. His commands are my command. And his formulation is protected by me to indicate the intention. Exactly. What is it? What's intended? He may be the formulator. So you can see did that. Sharia al-Muhammadiyya is perfectly fine to say that. But it's actually Sharia al-Ilahiyya as formulated and presented in infallible way by Muhammad. These are fine points, but if you go dig deep, you have to get there to see clear. So أطيعوا الرسول is really an amr. وأولي الأمر منكم as a footnote I did it to Rasul. These are commands. The first one, أطيعوا Allah, is not a command. It looks like a command, but it mentions these two facts I just mentioned earlier. Yeah? Good?
That's
Clear?
Yeah.
So you get out of the circularity and the hidden circularity which the Wahhabi fell in it. Unconsciously. Most people fall in it unconsciously. And that's what led them. The sujood ibadah, standing in front of a flag in a respectful way is ibadah, and shirk akbar. All of these things come from the same error. On the hidden circularity, they cannot overcome until you go deeper. So we were forced. Naturally, people by fitrah knew that internally without going into fine points. But since errors have been committed and became a madhab and became Daesh and so on, we have to go by necessity deeper, unfortunately, but that's it. So we did it. The whole book is about that, to build it consistently and to show that these people are like Khawarij, shallow. Like when they come in the masjid, scream loud to Ali ibn Abi Talib, criticizing him, La hukma illa lillah. So Ali just responded by kicking on the Mus'haf. Say, okay, talk, and say, you have lost your mind. This is just skin and leather and ink. How can it talk? Say, exactly. Men have to make it talk. Understand it and derive from it. And you don't understand. You are donkeys. You understand? He did not say that, but that's implicit. It's the only way to deal with some people who are flat or have problem, not enough gray matter in their heads. It's just to give simple examples like that. And still, it barely worked with them. The same like with the Wahhabi.
Okay, continuing.
Yeah? Continue.
Thus, the ultimate absolute foundational truth is the exclusive Rabbaniya, lordship of the Lord. Majestic is his glory in the Hukm, and his uniqueness in Siyada, that is, his being characterized by Hakimiyya. It necessarily follows by sensory perception and rational necessity that every servant who affirms and acknowledges that who affirms Hakimiyya must devote to him his exclusive worship in its comprehensive sense, namely complete submission and surrender. Or if you prefer, you may say obedience and subjugation, for that is the pinnacle of ubudiyya, servitude, its essence and the reality of its meaning. Then came the Sharia, which rendered this not merely a rational necessity, but a binding legal obligation that admits no compromise. Indeed, it's the foremost of all obligations and a pivot around which they revolve. Ibadat Allah equals الشهادة بالحكمية لله equals ta'atillah. Worshipping Allah equals testifying to the hakimiyya of Allah equals obeying Allah. The critical equation has already been established and proven. Thus, the worship of Allah, understood in its expansive sense as obedience and submission, founded upon love, reverence, and veneration, ultimately returns to and is grounded in its primary root and origin, the acknowledgement, assent, and surrender to Allah's Hakimiyya. Or to put it in another way, it is a testimony to Allah's Hakimiyya. This testimony is in and of itself the only rational and acceptable manifestation available to the created servant in relation to the Creator, Lord. That is, towards the supreme absolute ontological reality. In al-hukma illillah, the hukm belongs to Allah alone, or if one refers to la ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah, There is no substantive difference between the two formulations. They are mutually explanatory synonyms, each elucidating the other, and one necessarily follows from the other by both national and categorical Sharia necessity. Allah the Exalted has said, "The hukum is for Allah alone. He tells the truth, and He is the best of judges."
It's another form of the
إن الحكم إلا لله يقص الحق وهو خير الفاصلين. So that is Surah 657. This is a construction of exclusivity of exclusivity. Al-Hukm belongs to him alone, with no partner whatsoever. His declaration, as in his narratives, is the truth that confirms with reality and absolute certainty. He is the one who adjudicates every dispute and judges and rules in every disagreement with a definitive, conclusive judgment, one that is neither subject to appeal nor to questioning. In the worldly realm, this includes the definition of lawful and unlawful, of good and evil, and criteria for moral and ethical values. In the hereafter, it includes the final absolute and just judgment between his servants. There is no goodness, nor justice, nor truth except in his judgment. There is no other God except him, and no Lord besides him. Altogether, these three declarations that the Hukum belongs exclusively to Allah with no peer or partner, that He declares the truth and that He adjudicates in every dispute, and that He is the best of those who adjudicate, are all eternally and perpetually true reports about Allah. Blessed and exalted is He. It is inconceivable rationally that their opposites could be imagined, nor is it permissible or even possible for these declarations to be nasakh, abrogated. For akhbar, reports cannot be subject to abrogation. And we may observe that the verse affirms that hukum is exclusive to Allah with no rival or associate when it states in al hukmu ila lillah, the very same expression employed in Surah Yusuf in the report of Yusuf ibn Yaqub, peace and blessings be upon him and his father. That remarkable, comprehensive, and definitive statement has already been cited and discussed above. Yet it is true that truthful reports and narratives may also come from others.
Yeah.
Reporting what is true
is not exclusive. There are others who report the truth. Yeah. Obviously, nobody reports all truth and exclusive and never report untruth except Allah. But qasr al-haq, other may report the truth also. So it's not exclusive. And they are arbitrating fasilin, but he's the best of fasilin. There are fasilin who arbitrate things, but the one who settles the disputes properly, the best of them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By infinite margin, obviously, but the best of them, khairul fasilin. But there are other fasilin, and other who are al-haq, but al-hukm is exclusive to him. And all these normative issues are exclusive to him. Yeah. So even messengers do not have hukm. In al-hukm, they don't have. But what they utter is they utter in an infallible way. The hukm is coming from Allah. It's not their hukm. It's the hukm of Allah.
So here, fasilin in this instance, what does it mean again?
Fasilin.
Yeah.
The one who decides, decider. Okay. He's the best decider. There are others who decide also. Good decision, but he's the best.
Yeah.
Adjudicating. It's not a form of exclusion. But he's the best of the best in deciding. He's not the one that report the truth. Messenger report also the truth. But the hukm is exclusive to Allah. So what the messenger report, they report what Allah has made of hukm. That's not their hukm. And that's the reason the obedience to the messenger is not obedience to themselves as beings. It is obedience to Allah. But why it is أطيعوا الرسول the same like يطيع الرسول أطاع Allah? Allah says, I guarantee that the injunction they utter is my injunction formulated infallibly, and all of the affair is infallible. That is by reason of infallibility, not because that is their hukm. They by own being have any share in hukm. They don't have even one share in anything. The hukm is exclusively to Allah. So the hukm in its sense, in its meaning, not the necessary wording, but could be the wording from Allah, like the tablets or the Quran. It could be for a messenger. But the essence, the meaning, is the hukm itself. It's proper meaning is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, continue with the text. However, what comes from others in terms of truth and accuracy is necessarily limited, originating from acquired, created, and finite knowledge, whereas the knowledge of Allah is essential, infinite, and absolute. So vast is the disparity between one true report and another, and between one knowledge and another. There are indeed others besides Allah who judge between disputants and adjudicate disagreements, but how vast the difference between a created, contingent, finite, and temporal judge and the one who is eternal, infinite,
The
and
best is Allah
absolute, the
subhanahu
better
wa ta'ala.
judges.
The same with Qasr al-Haq, reporting the truth.
But what is the nature of the statement that the hukm belongs to Allah alone, without rival or partner? What precisely is the mahiyya, essential character of this exclusivity? It is a khabar report concerning, is it a khabar report concerning an actual existing reality, or is it an informative declaration concerning what ought to be, that is, a normative assertion of what is due and proper, regardless of what has been, is now, or will be the case in empirical reality? Upon reflecting on observed reality, known through direct sensory experience and through historically verified transmission, it becomes evident that the hukm in all four senses, relevant to our discussion and previously outlined, has in fact been exercised by others besides Allah, blessed and exalted is He. It continues to be exercised by others even now. Therefore, it is logically and textually impossible for the statement in al-hukmu illa lillah to be both a truthful report from Allah and at the same time a report about a presently existing factual condition.
So essentially, in al-hukmu should be rightly only to Allah. It's to Allah by necessity of reason and should be rightly attributed only to Allah. But it has been attributed to others. That's the reason people have difficulty, and Ali ibn Hatim had difficulty to understand when the Messiah said, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها. When they say يعبدوا إلها واحدا, he said, we did not worship them. How can you call them that we appointed them lords beside Allah? Masih, yeah, we worship them. We regard Masih as Rabb and Ilahan, so no problem. And we did not claim them Aliha. They adopted them Arbab in the rank of Aliha, sovereign, ultimate, sovereign. And so say, didn't they give them an example way, simple way, didn't go in the deep philosophical expression, the ruling by its meaning and so on. He just gave an example. Didn't they make halal, which is clearly halal in the scripture, they make it haram and vice versa? Say yes. Say that's the ibadah. That's it. They can change the law from their own desire, not based on any revelation. Violating that in the hukm lillah. The hukm should be all there. So it can happen in the universe that someone transgress and make hukm by, for example, allowing what Allah has prohibited just by his own ijtihad, not just meets together and they claim by divine protection they have to give it some kind of a divine sanction, but this is all fabrication, cannot exist. And then they become Lord beside Allah. They ought not to be, but it happens. Yeah, so that's that. So this intrinsic hukm cannot be transferred, cannot be. But some people can usurp it, and then they become themselves. They declare themselves to divine, so they dispute with Allah His sovereignty and His lordship, and anyone acknowledging that to them has appointed them Lord beside Allah and committing shirk. So they become idols, Lord beside Allah, and the one who doing that are worshipping them and making them committing shirk by this act. Good? Clear? Then the ayah is very clear. And the objection of Adi ibn Hatim is clear because people do not understand the issue of sovereignty properly. They don't go into depth. Or they have the simple mind that is worship, meaning just standing and lighting candles and kissing feet and all these things. No, it is not. It is attributing sovereignty in some sense. Some of this, but attributing fundamentally the most important is attributing sovereignty to any entity beside Allah, or attributing things which are of divine nature, like the jinn can escape from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is another type, but this will give him certain divinity, and then the fearing them, etc., become an act of worship, became shirk. the main attribution is the shirk and aqidah, and then the result will be fear, sacrifice, whatever they do. All of that will be done act of ibadah because of this creed. Yeah, not because fear by itself, by its necessity, ibadah. No, it's not. It's just a human reaction, internal reaction. Sacrificing something, meaning slaughtering an animal with the intent, for example, to offer it to a guest, has nothing to do with any worship or attributing sovereignty. But sacrificing to escape the evil of jinn, for example, or perform magic, black magic, whatever they do, that's what this will become an expression of shirk and be an act of shirk, etc. So that's tied the whole issue, but we're focusing more on the issue of sovereignty and hukum, not in these other acts which are usually people call rituals and things like that. Although they can't be treated in the same way. Okay.
The phrase "in al hukmu illa lillah" must then necessarily be understood as a declaration of what ought to be, not a description of what has actually occurred, is occurring now or will occur in future times. Its meaning therefore must be rendered as the hukum ought to belong to Allah alone, without rival or partner, even if in
actually both things more precise. Maybe in the next edition will in hukmu ila Allah, this is the fact which based on necessity of reason as in itself, but it should be like that also. But unfortunately, that has been violated by some people. It's hukmu lillah by necessity by in itself, but it's the abstract philosophical aspect, and it should not be no sovereignty or any part of it should be attributed to anybody else. So enshrined in that, but unfortunately, that's not what's happening in the reality. And that's the reason why Ibn Hatim has this problem, and many people have that problem. Even the West, if you tell them that the parliament is divine, they will be in a state of shock, thinking they must have lost his mind. Until now. And you regard the king as a divine. Say, no, he has divine right. He's not divine. They will escape with all kinds of ways, all kinds of misconception. Some madkhali also end in that, yeah. Dangerous, the ending for that.
It's a de facto, but they still try to hide it.
Yeah.
And with that associate, even if there's a transgression by others upon this divine prerogative. As a result, whoever appropriates the term, the hukum, for himself, even in a single matter, has committed the crime of trespassing upon a prerogative that belongs exclusively to the divine essence. He has violated the sanctity of lordship and the domain of divine sovereignty. That is, he has made himself a Rabb and Ilah besides Allah, whether or not he explicitly declares this, whether or not he openly proclaims it by saying, for instance, I am your Lord Most High. And that's 37:24. If this is indeed the case, and it is definitively the case if the Quran is truly from Allah, then whoever grants such a one that prerogative has without doubt ascribed to him lordship and divinity besides Allah. He is thereby a mushrik and kafir and murtad from Islam, if he had previously held a valid contract of Islam. It is not possible for the matter to be otherwise. That is one aspect. From another aspect, the phrase itself requires further specification regarding the meaning of hukum, that exclusive prerogative of command for Allah, glorified and exalted be He. Does it encompass all four meanings previously mentioned, or only some of them? Through an indicative examination of the Noble Quran, the Mutawatir reports from the Sunnah, the prophetic biography, and even the narratives of former prophets, we find that the Prophet ﷺ and his family practiced, peace be upon him and his family, practiced hukum in several senses, in the sense of governance and the administration of public affairs, in the sense of qada, adjudication, and in the sense of fatawa, that is the communication of a ruling without binding enforcement by the authority of the sovereign. His companions, may Allah be pleased with him, likewise engaged in these forms of hukum by his command and under his supervision, and all of this was without doubt by the command and permission of Allah. It is therefore inconceivable that any of this could constitute even the slightest infringement upon or transgression of Allah's exclusive right to hukum. For this reason, it is necessary that the meaning of hukum intended in the verses that declare its exclusivity belonging to Allah Allah Ta'ala is limited solely to tashri'. legislation in its essence and foundational meanings as an act of origination and creation. We say, in its essence and foundational meanings, in anticipation of what might arise in certain feeble minds and shallow defective understandings, namely a confusion between legislation in its essence and meanings and the act of expressing legislation, articulating legislation, or conveying legislation. So basically, operationalizing the what's already been specified. To clarify further, the statements, actions, and tacit approvals of the Prophet ﷺ are infallible revelation from Allah. Thus, the essence and meaning of the legislation is exclusively from Allah, but its articulation came through the Prophet's utterance and expression, or through his action or approval, all of which necessarily originate from the Prophet and not directly from Allah. This is the meaning of the established principle that the Sunnah is infallible revelation from Allah conveyed by the Prophet through his words, deeds, or silent endorsement.
In infallible way.
Likewise, the writings of the Muslim jurists are nothing more than commendable efforts to formulate divine legislation within the limits of the author's personal scholarly reasoning and knowledge. What distinguishes the works of the jurists from the text of the prophetic Sunnah is that the latter are fallible, while the former is not. I think they put it in verse.
Yeah.
Therefore, there is no guarantee that what is contained within them in terms of the essence and meaning of the legislation is truly from Allah in accordance with his intended will. The same applies to what states enact in the form of constitutions, laws, and regulations. Such enactments may in some cases merely represent the adoption of divine legislation in its essence, even if formulated in the framework of constitutions, regulations, or codified law, as is the case in a state that is in truth an Islamic state. In that case, this would be in reality fall under the category of riyasat al-shu'un, administration of affairs, and not legislative by way of origination and creation. Hence, it would not constitute a transgression against Allah's exclusive right to hukum, even if those adopted enactments are not infallible. However, the enactment by states and nations of constitution, laws, and regulations may also take the form of legislation by origination, and this would indeed be a transgression upon rububiyyah and siyadat of Allah, and a violation of the sacred sanctum of exalted uluhiyyah. Whoever engages in this is a taghut, an arrogant disbeliever, accursed in both this world and the hereafter, and whoever affirms such legislation or submits to it is thereby a mushrik and a kafir. Such a system is itself a kufr-based system, not an Islamic system. From all of the foregoing discussion, the gravity of the crime committed by the Khawarij al-Hururiyya against the religion of Allah becomes manifest when they rejected arbitration between the Imam of Guidance, the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be God's pleasure and peace be upon him, and Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, on the claim that it contradicted the statement of the exalted, Innal hukmu illa lillah. They allege that Ali was the Imam of Guidance and the gate of the prophetic city of knowledge. They alleged that Ali who was the Imam of Guidance and the gate of the prophetic city of knowledge, had delegated judgment to men in the deen of Allah. Such indeed are the effects of shallow, defective understanding and degenerate, dull-minded reasoning, just as we see plainly today among the adherents of the Wahhabi sect. And Allah the Exalted has said, confirming what has been previously established, Allah lahul hukmu wa huwa asra'ul hasibin. The judgment truly belongs to him, and he is the swiftest of reckoners, and that's 662. This too is another formulation of exclusivity, sigat hasr. For the word al-hukm appears with the definite article al, thereby encompassing the entire genus of hukm, that is, every form and type of judgment. His exclusivity and singularity, glorified and exalted is he, are further reinforced in the verse by the syntactic placement of the prepositional phrase lahu before the subject, and using the emphatic article ara, both of which denote emphasis and restriction. However, there are many who reckon and take account, yet he, the exalted, is the best, the wisest, and swiftest
The
among
same
those who
like
reckon.
أسرع خير الفاصلين, he أسرع الحاكمين, the fastest in accounting and reckoning. But the others who reckon and account, but he's the fastest and the best. الحكم exclusive, ألا له الحكم, only هو exclusive, similar to the other one. الحكم إلا لله يقص الحق وهو خير الفاصلين. Also, the first one is exclusive, the second one is not an exclusion. Second and the third in the previous ayah, and this one is only a first and second. First one, ألا له الحكم exclusively, and reckoning, yeah, some other may reckon, but he is the أسرع, the fastest reckoning, and the best reckoning, the most perfect reckoning. But there are other reckoner, but the ruler, حكم, only for him. ألا له الحكم exclusively. Okay, so that's that.
And also,
is meaning the essential meaning, not the formulation, not writing in form of laws and statutes, not pronounce a judgment for the law system who take the precedences as law. All of this is not a problem. Formulation, so that's all not a problem. What's a problem is the essence. Where is the essence coming from?
And in hukmu lillah is exclusive as well, just to reiterate again. And Allah the Exalted has said, ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. All creation and command belongs to Him. Exalted be Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, and that's 754. This too is a formulation of exclusivity, as previously noted, just as He alone is the creator and the provider in truth, by way of origination, independence, and ultimately causation. So too is He alone the one who commands and forbids. That is to say, He alone is the sovereign, singular in His exclusive right to hukum, that is, to legislation in its essence and foundational meanings, by way of origination and initiation. Allah the Exalted has said, whatever you may differ about, it's for Allah to judge. Say, such as Allah, my Lord, in Him I trust and to Him I turn. That's 42:10. Yeah, I can't, it's too small to read. This is
Yeah, whatever the dispute about, it's the ruling below. The ruling of it, the essential meaning is only to Allah.
This is not merely an exclusive attribution of Allah's right to hukum in matters over which people differ. Rather, He is the judge absolutely and without restriction. Humanity has agreed upon the necessary first principles of reason, those implanted within the very structure and nature of the intellect. Or if you prefer, you may say they are part of reason insofar as it is reason. And it is Allah, glorified and exalted be He, who created it, thus having decreed and judged by qada, taqdiri, qawni, preordained ontological determination that it should be so. There is nothing beyond Allah. Rather, He is al-awwal, and the first, al-akhir, the last, al-zahir, the manifest, and al-batin, the hidden. And to Him is the ultimate return. And He, the Exalted, has said, "Wallahu yahkumu la mu'aqqibu li hukmihi وهو theory al-hisab." Allah decides, no one can reverse His decision, and He is swift in reckoning. That's 1341. How could it be conceived that there exists anything in all of existence capable of contesting the judgment of Allah? Is He not the first and the last? Is the origin not from Him, and is not the final return unto Him? Should anyone object to the judgment of Allah under the pretext that it conflicts with reason, by his false and baseless assertion, it may rightfully be said to him, did not your own reason affirm to you that you are limited in essence, that you are not infinite, that you are contingent in existence, not necessary nor self-sufficient in your being, that you are created, not eternal or pre-existent, that your intellect is created by Allah, not an independent or absolute intellect, that your knowledge is acquired, temporal and unlimited, not intrinsic, absolute, eternal, or unbounded. What Allah possesses is absolute, intrinsic knowledge, complete awareness of His creation, and comprehensive capacity for perception and judgment. Thus, His hukum is by necessity prior and superior to your judgment. Your supposition that Allah's ruling is in conflict with reason is a false supposition. It is a case of optical illusion, of of the inner sight, just as there is an optical illusion in outward vision. No matter how many times you repeat the act of looking, the eye remains deceived. Yet you recognize by rational evidence and its testimony that it is indeed illusion and delusion. So too in this case, reason must rule that such a supposition is false and illusory, for its contrary is logically impossible. This is the illusion of the intellect, and it stems from the whisperings of Shaitan, may Allah curse him. For Shaitan knows well that you are limited and that you possess the potential for delusion. Thus he performs his deception, hoping to escape with his crime. The human intellect, that marvelous creation, is by Allah's enablement and his honoring of it, capable of exposing these satanic whisperings and uncovering the illusion of the inner sight. To Allah belongs all praise and bounty. The origin of your intellect is from Allah, by his act of creation, bringing into being and composition. So how can the branch return to its source in repudiation? If the root is nullified, then all branches from it is nullified. You yourself would be void and your intellect rendered invalid. Confidence in it would vanish altogether. So how could you accept as authoritative a judgment that is founded upon the illusion of inner sight from the outside? Basically, if you have a deficient tool, how can you measure with it?
Yeah.
It is precisely like the foolish imbecile who sat upon a branch of a tall and lofty tree, and then instructed a passerby to cut the trunk of the very tree itself, so the branch fell with him and his neck was broken. How can the branch remain when the root is severed? And he, blessed are his names, has said, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. He cannot be called to account for anything he does, whereas they will be called to account.
What kind of question this will negate reason? Reason will disappear. Done. Questioning is exactly like cutting the stem and then claiming you can stay aloof. It's not possible.
Question is a form of objection and review, and we have already established above that it is logically and ontologically impossible for there to be any objection to Allah's judgment. Such a notion would entail the collapse and destruction of reason itself, the invalidation of its judgments, and the impossibility of speech and language altogether. Whoever reaches such a pathological condition, one of utter sophistic nihilism, should endure with patience until it passes, for such states do not persist. Otherwise, let him perish, that he may relieve himself and be a source of relief to others. And Allah the Exalted has said, مَا لَهُمْ مِن دُونِهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا يُشْرِكُ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا. And they have no one to protect them other than him. He does not allow anyone to share his hukm. And that's Surah 18:26. Thus, his possession of hukm and sovereignty is not merely by virtue of his being wajib al-wujud, the necessarily existent, eternal, without beginning, everlasting, without end, but also because he does not permit anyone absolutely or under any circumstance to share with him in judgment, that is, in legislation, in its essence and foundational meanings, as an act of origination and creation. In this single verse alone lies the most decisive refutation of the claims of secularism, which seek to assign creation to Allah while denying that command belongs to him. Yet he, exalted are his names, and lofty is his station, does not permit any partnership in his hukm, his command or prohibitions. He has not delegated this to anyone, nor has he authorized anyone in this matter whatsoever. He retains forever the ultimate prerogative of command. This is the reading adopted by the majority. However, Ibn Amir al-Shami recited وَلَا تُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا in the form of a prohibition. Do not associate with him in his hukm. That is, do not appoint for Allah any partner in judgment. And this meaning is already subsumed within the reading of the majority.
وَلَا يُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ, reporting that Allah does not allow anyone to share. And the other one, وَلَا تُشْرِكْ, Ibn Amr reading, وَلَا تُشْرِكْ, addressing the messenger and the human beings generally. Don't attribute any sharing in his ruling to anybody else, which is a sub result of the previous one. So the better reading, the majority, لَا يُشْرِكْ. But the other reading is also has a merit, has good sense. And obviously, since both are making sense, both you can say are intended because the revelation does not contain does not make the original rasm, does not have the dots. Yushrik is only the number, only the tick in Arabic. The two dots above for the ta or dot below are missing anyway. So you can read this and this, but the majority of reading, the overwhelming majority, say ولا يشرك, addressing Allah speaking about himself, ولا يشرك في حكمه أحدا. And only one single say ولا تشرك في حكمه أحدا as a command, which is okay. And the best point of view is that if it's a revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, both are intended. The majority one is the main one, and this one is also a sub one. Can be derived from that, but it can be derived from the ayah according to the issues of rasm, of writing.
So with yushrik it becomes passive, with a dhamma, and then with tushrik would become an amr, yeah.
Amr, yeah, and the other one is just a report. Okay. The report is wider. Allah does not allow anyone to share, and by necessity you should not share. Or I believe in share. So this is the better reading, but the other one is also making good sense, and you could say that's intended because, as we said, the rasm, which is revealed, we said at the beginning, and we will establish it further, inshallah, in the Quran recordation work, which will inshallah complete soon. We will start working it soon, inshallah, in completion. Is that it's revealed as a rasm, does not have dots. And, any dotting which gives good sense can be regarded as intended. And sometimes these add beautiful meaning. Sometimes they just deepen and specialize another meaning, etc. And Allah is very well capable to intend all of these. A human being will not be able to do. Good?
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be an amazing piece of work. No one's done it.
That's one of the amazements of the Quran. Because it's not conceivable that the Prophet cannot read and write, first of all. But the people writing with him, he must have instructed them, because the dotting in Arabic exists before that. Some Orientalists claim, just a side note, that the dotting was invented later. That's only a donkey can say that. We have evidence even writing on stones and writing on parchment at the time of Umar and so on. So it's not invented later. It can be. It's stupidity. Like the dotting of the I and the J. They have dots, but the I and J without dots do not exist. So you can omit the dot or put the dot, is not relevant there, but there the dots are Arabic is essential. Otherwise you can't distinguish between Jim, Ha, and Qa. The three different letters differ in shape, but don't differ except with dotting. So that existed, but the Prophet ordered them remove that. And so why should a liar or someone mentally deranged remove the dots? It's just beyond human reasoning. It does not make any sense for any human. But it makes sense if it's a divine revelation with certain intention, which appears in this example and many other examples. Yeah, good.
This meaning is already subsumed within the reading of the majority, which is namely Quran transmitted through mutawatir and verified with absolute certainty. Thus, if he, blessed are his names, does not himself associate anyone in his hukum, nor delegate any portion of judgment to another, nor authorize anyone therein, then how much more impermissible is it for anyone else to assign a partner to him in hukum?
Exactly.
The truth is that most secularists, and especially their leaders, make such statements as a matter of political expediency and hypocrisy, intended to deceive the common people, for in reality the majority of them are materialists and atheists. They deny the existence of the Creator, or they doubt it, or they suspend judgment concerning it. Yet they are too cowardly to declare such views openly, or to call others to them explicitly, out of fear of wrath of the simple masses who believe in the existence of Allah, and in caution against the public backlash that might ensue. Okay, so this concludes this section.
I think we're still here. What's the time now?
The time is 10:37. I know some people have questions,
so
it's a good point to stop. So from next week it will be chapter 4, legislation which would constitute tyranny and usurpation. That's page 27. And just a reminder, this Sunday there won't be tafsir or Q&A, but the following week will be Q&A. There'll be no tafsir or Q&A this Sunday coming up, but the following Sunday it will be business as usual. But Tawheed will be the same. Okay, so any commentary on this? I know that we've had a discussion already.
It's expanded. I think it's expanded up to the boring level, but still, let's see what.
Okay, so Berhad, you wanna unmute if you can?
Yeah, I am muted. Salam alaikum.
Excellent.
Salam
Do you
alaikum.
mind getting close to your mic?
Yeah, give me 1 second then,
Sure.
or 30 seconds.
Is my voice better or is it the
Yeah,
same?
better.
Oh, good. So let me get the questions out because I made a list. But is it gone? Ras, can you read out the questions I've written as notes just so I can
Sure.
jog my memory?
So I'm going to list my questions from Imam Ali Radiallahu anh said that the Quran doesn't talk, but the qatiyat of the Quran do talk without the need of.
So, Ustad, you know the Imam is always used this khabar of Imam Ali as well, saying this is why you need the infallible, this is why you need the ma'soom. But is there maybe like a flawed reasoning here? Because yes, the Quran doesn't.
What's that? You said something and you said it in a hurry, very slowly, so I hear it. What is it?
Yes. I said the Imamiyya used this khabar about Ali ibn Abi Talib saying the Quran does not talk. Yes. So you need a ma'soom, you need an infallible to make it talk.
Why you need ma'soom? You need someone who extracts the meaning of it, ma'soom or otherwise.
But no, the mafhum is, the understood is, the Quran always needs someone like fuqaha or ulama to understand it. However, although this is the case, definitely the case, when it comes to the qat'iyat and certain masail which are definitive, why does the Quran need anyone? Why does the Quran require anyone?
It doesn't need in the qat'iyat, doesn't need, but some dim-witted guys like these, because they don't go through the ayah al-hukm, all of them. They just see the inner hukm ilah, they stop there. And they don't ponder, they don't see the ayah of hukm. And as they يحكم بها النبيون, so the nabiyun doing hukm. So what is the inner hukm ilah? What does it mean? That's where people have to extract. So if you at this point, the Khawarij, because of shalom, they did not make a they don't read the Quran properly. And that the Quran is clear, but you have to read all of it from cover to cover.
Yes. So now this goes to my second point after addressing this. In an ideal Islamic government, where the constitution is based on the hukm of Allah, the Sharia, the qat'iyat, we all agree, yes, it's going to be implemented more or less in a particular way.
You don't need, in the question say, this, the base of the state is the Quran and Sunnah and so on. What's qat'i, definite, is part of this constitution without being mentioned necessarily. That's it. That's
what I was going to ask. Can the state...
That's a formulation of the constitution. You don't need to list all the qat'is. So it's based, everything in the Quran should be based on derived from Quran or this store, and we will not mention those who are well established with certitude. They are automatically part of this constitution and above the constitution. Simple.
Okay, my third question is, when it comes to shura, it's a divine obligation in terms of the Islamic style of governance, institutionalized by Allah, of course, the lawgiver. Does the hakim, the ruler, is he obliged to consult the shura committee in every single mas'ala that includes all of them, their mutual affairs?
That's the technicality and the ways and what ought not will be specified in the constitution. What he consults, what is the Quran, and which consultation is binding for him, what's just a resolution, which is not binding. Every constitution has choices there, but in principle, he has to consult. All the affairs of the ummah must be run by shura, amrum shura bainahum, and the ruler and the messenger of Allah was ordered to consult him in the affairs.
Yes.
So that's it. What is the details? What's the limitation, etc. For example, Sheikh Taqi said, in case of adoption rules, it's only for the imam because he is the mustadil. It's a mistake, because the one adopts is the ummah and the run affairs. So Majlis al-Shura participated in that. Now, is participation necessary? Is necessary? Yes. Is it binding or not binding? Someone could say, yeah, Majlis Shura with majority, and the imam has to accept. If he doesn't accept, they may override him by a certain majority, like in America, or they must agree, or they refer to the people in a popular vote. That's various techniques to see that Shahurum fil Amr has been fulfilled the most perfect way. Yeah,
I see. So
this is how to execute it in her. That's the reason the Sharia Islam is the mistake of many people think that these things, the administrative parts and the technicalities, like for example, Shahurum fil Amr, the Mushawara before Uhud, which the people say, where it was not for Mushawara, we would not have gone outside, and we would have been in Medina, and we have defeated the Quraysh easily. For example, then the Quran said, that's not true. The Mushawara for Amr must be done. would be in the masjid, would be a popular vote. At the time, popular vote was not executable. Maybe in Medina, everyone is in the masjid. But in a bigger place, there was no technology to do that.
Yes.
But still, you see, it consulted about even battlefield issues, which usually delegated to the expert. Most institutions in the world regard that privilege of the executive.
I see.
That a specific battle, how to run to inside or outside. But the general frame and the limitation of the powers and what to do, the army and its limitation is usually enshrined in laws. Some of it's even international agreement, how to deal with the prisoners of war, etc. So it's part of the domestic law.
Yes, yes.
That's all. That's technically how to execute. But the basic ruling, the affairs must be shura.
Because I got into this technicality because when I look at the lafz of the Quran when it comes to shura in these two verses, I do see that shura is binding because there are some, as you know,
no doubt. But look, the procedures did not develop because shura was abolished. Muawiyah usurped the power and it's finished. The experience did not accumulate in time. For example, they dispute about the conquered lands.
Yes.
Umar obviously decided to keep it in the treasury so that proceed will be available for jihad and for the ummah until Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Yes.
Zubayr and so on refused, say, divided between us. Umar did not, they tried to find, and he made invoking the ayah. والذين بعدهم إلى آخره ولكان يكون دولة بين أغنياء منكم. This way, only the one who conquered one day will become trillionaires, and the money will be distributed in the ummah. So he has a good argument, but he made sure about that. Ask Badri, people of Badr, they disputed, they didn't come to an agreement. He wanted to have consensus. Nobody, and asked another group. Then ultimately, he asked some of embraced Islam after conquest of Mecca. So the lowest level was the last, and chose 10 of them from whom he knows have the best ideas. Definitely, it was not Abu Sufyan and questionable people there. Only the one who are solid, proven to be good Muslim after the conquest of Mecca, and they all agreed 100% of them, all of them. So he went and said that's the shura which I take, because there was no written technicality of the shura, was not written. The details, how to do it, how to execute it, the administrative part of it. So he was experimenting. Uthman have other experimentation, other have experimentation. Ali was doing the widest possible consultation and suffering results because of that, because most people were idiots at his time, etc. So practice did not develop. These things have to develop over decades and centuries. Now other nations have developed that, so we can look and adapt and try to analyze why they adopt that, what's the reason for the technicalities, not for the principle of shura. Principle of shura is absolute, no doubt about that. Okay, so that's the second question. But this is more of the statecraft now. Good. Next question. Bharat.
Oh, sorry, I need to unmute Bharat to get it up. Muted by accident. Unmute, bruv.
Yeah, I got muted. Yeah, that's clear, Ustad. Yes. I only brought it up because I was discussing with a friend who was arguing that shura is not fard, it's not wajib, but it's recommended. So yeah, I got into this technicality with him that I extend shura as furthest as possible.
No,
so the legislator is the one who designates what we do.
It's not only for the community, for the shura. By now, is in shura ila Makki. Is between salah and zakah, ahead of zakah. Yeah.
Yes.
وقاموا الصلاة وهم شورى بينهم مرزقان. So it is more obligatory for the community ahead of zakah. In the order. He's mentioning the arkan there. That's number one. And then Medina command to the Messenger of Allah, despite the disaster of Uhud, شاورهم في الأمر. So it's very clear.
And that's قياس بالأولى. If Rasulullah, who's Nabiullah, is commanded by Allah to do istishara,
that everyone else, everyone who is in charge, شاورهم في الأمر, in the affairs, in the common and the public affairs.
In all of public affairs, exactly. Rash, what other question did I ask? Was it about
the affairs of the community, as a community, as a nation, as a ummah of a state?
Yes.
Not the private affairs.
Not the private affairs.
Yeah, private affairs,
of course.
We have
collective affairs that are left halal.
Yeah.
The ummah collectively.
The example of Barira, when she became free, she refused her husband. Yeah, she did not want to kill because she has the right to get out of the marriage.
Yes.
She's now free. She is the master of herself. And
Exactly.
then he was weeping and going around and so on. They have even children. And I'm saying, Allah tell them, he's the father of your kids and so on. And he's suffering. He's going weeping in the streets of Medina. It's a big love story. Should have a movie. Should we tell Hollywood to make a movie about Buraira's husband? He said, do you command me? Say, no, I'm just Shafi. I'm just trying to be interceding.
Intercessor.
Say, no, I don't want him. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not binding in here. That's his private advice.
Very, very liberal, actually, for that time, especially.
Yeah. So that's it. So this needs really reading the Quran properly. Yeah. And most scholars in time past, because the majority agree that Muawiyah is a legitimate ruler, unfortunately, got stuck in that. Only Ibn Atiyah, when say talk about Shura, and Shura say, Shura من عزائم الأحكام. It's an obligatory حكم, and who does not do proper Shura from the rulers should be removed from office.
Yeah.
It's violating, that's the correct one. But to formulate that in a constitution and have the habit, that's a problem. It did not get to that, so that there was no written document yet developed.
Ustad, this is why I got into the technicality, because some might say, okay, Shura is fard, is wajib, is necessity. However, can the Wali al-Amr negate the majority opinion in the Council of the Shura, or can he not? If he can negate it...
No, that was in which matters. That's how the Shura itself has to be. The Shura, which established a constitution, has to set that and limitations. So the Majlis al-Shura will focus on things of general legislation, maybe budget, things like that. But الأمر في الأمور الأخرى, they can issue resolution about their ideas, they can ignore them, and you can take them in board. They offer their opinion about certain affairs, which more of executive nature and should be given to that. And that can be clarified in the constitution. And the system differ in a wide range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there are those who try to argue that there could be a Malik who rules with Sharia and he does Shura. But I said
no, because he cannot get in being Wali Amr unless he is properly chosen by Bay'ah.
Yeah.
That's it. That has nothing to do with Shura. And Bay'ah is the community has to agree, or the majority has to come there. This is another issue independent.
Of course. No, what I meant is some would try, contest and argue that you can have Mulukiya, you can have a Malik.
You can't, because it violates fundamental, not violates Shura or not Shura. It violates fundamental how you can be Wali Amr. By Bay'ah. The majority of people agreeing upon you.
So what if the Malik is agreed upon by Bay'ah, but he says he's a Malik? He used the
title. What will be Bay'ah? Then it is not a Malik, because he inherited mulk before.
I see what you mean.
That's the meaning of Malik. He inherits.
So the way I define Malik, my understanding is you cannot interrupt his decision. You know, Abu Bakr, when he's elected, he says, and my rule, my hukum is not like that of Kisra or Qaisar. You will interrupt my decision. You can interrupt my decision.
That's his goal without understanding. But he did not come because of inheritance or because of any other thing, or because of divine appointment like the Shia claim. That's not.
Yeah.
I never claimed that. Same with Umar. Same, Hatta Ali even. He insisted to have bay'ah from all areas and send people to collect signatures and so on.
So the main thing that differentiates Mulukiya from Imamah or Khilafah, whatever you want to use, is bay'ah. Bay'ah is the asl,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. And also that's what distinguished from Nas al-Ilahi.
So Ustad, let me give you a hypothetical scenario. Let's say there is an Emir who's elected by bay'ah, but this Emir, he's so tough, he's so strict, he's always interrupting the shura of the people. Well, what would be the hukum on this type of Emir?
That if the constitution does not specify the limitation and so on, then he has to make sure on everything. And if he rejects the majority view, he's violating the principle of shura.
That's Mulukiya. Exactly. That's a type of Malikiya, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's type. That's iqtisab. He's reserving power.
For example, every time the shura committee votes something in a field that's halal, ibaha, he says, no, I'm going to do this. And he's tough on it. And he prevents their committee from actualizing their decision. That would lead to, again...
That's the reason you have to have a written constitution showing the details. In time of Sahaba and so on, it was clear that the committee or the leadership is the Sabiqin Awwaleen and the Badri, and they were meeting and discussing, and the rest of Ummah accept them as representative. There was even no formal election. Later on, things introduced. Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he insisted to be having bay'ah in the masjid and wrote to all areas getting their bay'ah. People of Muawiyah stopped them by force. By the sword from getting in Sham. We know that.
Yes.
So that practice is developing further, but there was no time to get it written down. And when fiqh was written down in details in books and so on, and structured books and so on, the mess was already done. It was destroyed. You just find generalities in the book of fiqh. The best to say, he has to make sure of Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd. Who Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd? Some confusing, absurd claim. The people who seems to be representing the opinion of the people. How do we know they represent? We say the leader of Tujjar, the leader of the army. That's nonsense. That's their imagination.
I see.
But this has to be settled by a written constitution. That's the reason you have to have a written constitution nowadays.
For example,
people claiming like Naif bin Abdul Aziz when they about basic law and the constitution, the Dastur and Quran and Sunnah. This is absurdity. The Quran and Sunnah cannot be Dastur. Quran and Sunnah is the source of the Dastur and the reference frame for the Dastur, not the Dastur itself. Because the Dastur has to establish procedures, what to do, how to do. That's the Dastur.
Yes.
The basic law of the state, procedures and so on. It doesn't contain only fundamental principles. It has enough actualization so it can be implemented with minimum problems. Hopefully it's written well. Not all the satire are written well. Some are better than the others. Some have internal inconsistency.
Yeah.
Abu Muhab, was you saying something?
Professor, there's a good argument for actually not to write a constitution. I've heard one enlightened Islamist, he says that there's no need to write a constitution because it is only going to widen the procedures unnecessarily. So in the constitution...
No, it's necessary. But for how to make sure of that?
So from his argument, he's saying that the government should be a small, limited government.
Absolutely, but how to make it a small, but still a government?
But in the constitution,
in the idealization, as the Khawarij say, if the people be treating each whether just, almost infallible, then there's no need for imam. That's true. But this is low. This is imtina'. It's an imaginary situation. The reality showed that we will not do that.
But aren't you afraid that with a written constitution, it is going to write every single detail of every...
No, not every single detail. That's the art of writing a constitution.
Yeah, but sometimes that's unnecessarily. That's unneeded. It is.
You check the constitution, the word, and see what's needed, not needed. American constitution is very wide, and the reason they have to rely on the Supreme Court, and there were intellectual fights and so on, and amendments and so on. Originally, was very wide, very soft.
Yes, very wide. There's even.
It turns out it created problem. They needed to
absolutely. That's the point that I was going to make. You know, if you remember the first time, I think Trump got elected, he got like 10,000 papers. He said that these are laws in the constitution that we are going to relook and check if they.
No, it's not a constitution. It's constitutive order. That's the laws enacted after that based on the constitution. The constitution can restrict that. For example, doesn't give that. It should not give. For example, the constitution does not restrict the executive well enough. The American constitution.
Yes.
Other constitutions are restricting the executive much better. The German one. That's the reason we have to read the constitutional experience of the people over hundreds and thousands of years and see what can be extracted from procedures and what is the sense, the reason of the procedure behind that. This is a science by itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But my argument that the procedures should be limited because it's the
that's the writing the constitution. Leave the constitution assembly meet and discuss and come to conclusion. But you have to tell the people there are other experiences of other nations about procedures and ways and means which had been experienced and applied through history. Some of them proved to be good, some proved to be less better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with 10,000 papers of laws and regulations.
No. It doesn't tell
Sahih.
you that. No, it will be maybe 10 pages, 15 pages.
The
Yes.
Sahifa of Al Medina is an example of a constitution as well, is it not?
It doesn't have these procedures. It has some procedures, but not a procedure. It has but because it's written, it is actually also a confederate documents, which is the entities. It's enough for the confederation, but internally, the sub-states, the various tribes, they know their duties. They know, and life was simple. The Sahifa specified that they're responsible for diya, responsible for supporting each other, having their own treasury and things like that, without going in detail. Even the treasury, the central treasury, was still just under control of the Prophet ﷺ, and the people know what comes in and how it goes out. That's it. There was no need really for now. Now you need a little bit more of a regulation in principle, but you can't say the treasury can have this and this and this. This type of general taxation is permitted, and that no specific tax will be enacted except by shura, maybe regard of bigger majority, and certain taxes are prohibited and things like that. That can be the constitution. So if you need really to review all Islamic law, see in history what has happened, see what the fuqaha say, Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd, the consultation, and taking their point of view, what they mean, how to get this Ahl wal-Aqd to be activated. They do not specify how to choose them. They're chosen somehow by divine act in the universe. That's not the way it works. And this means that I'm sure, because it talks about the meaning, Amruhum Shura Bainahum, the whole community, the whole believer. So you have to look to the experience of other nations. But it's details of that. But the principle is clear. Shura, justice, etc., applying what Allah has revealed. And the skeleton of the state will be called basic law, constitution. And then there will be laws, if necessary, derived from that. Yeah. For example, budget. At the time, there was not very much to be budgeting. The army is self-financing. Everyone finances himself. That has disappeared. Nobody, no army in the world can, the people can. So all the issues of Maghanim have gone. They don't exist, except maybe the salab. If you kill someone from the enemy, and you bring a witness that you are the one who killed him, which is almost impossible in modern warfare, then you may be entitled to that what he has in his body. Yeah. What's that? That's it. That's the only thing which may remaining now. And even that's not executable in modern warfare anyway. You see my point? All other things, because they were the one, they were having their own horses, their own camels, their own weapons. That's it. His own horse. That's the reason the one with the horse is having. Who has now his own plane or his tank? It's not. So there was no need for much details of budgeting and things like that. No need. Small localities, there's the public treasury there in the control of the judge or the governor or the city or somebody with that, and everything is there. And people who think they are eligible, they come and ask for zakat, and it is verified, and they're giving their share. That's it.
Ustad, let me ask you a question. You know, for example, in our constitution, from what I remember from a while ago, the Shura Council will have significant power, which will minimize the power of the head of state, the one who's elected. Let's say we agree that he's gonna rule the affairs for 7 years.
Yeah, it should be from experience of all. They should be the one who write the laws. The adoption of laws, if need an adoption, to have from some ahkam shar'iyya, if there's something need to be adopted, if needs, maybe they should leave it for the people and for the judges. But some may be needed to be adopted, for example. Yeah, and that's it. And first will be voted, is that something we should adopt, or should we leave it for the judges and the people to do ijtihad and be more dynamic? That's number one. Secondly, which evidence we should adopt. So the scholarly committees maybe public writing that everyone should have his input and send it to this committee for discussion. Scholars even abroad, outside even the entity, can contribute because this is based on Quran and Sunnah. It's not located only in Iraq or in Najd and so on. It's general. So all of these have their input. And then the Shura analyze that and come with the majority, what is the strongest point of view. And then there may be, beside that, there will be certain procedure. Like look at Zakah. Zakah, what the Prophet was collecting is certain major monies. Other monies, he said, عفوت عن هذا, meaning this is an insignificant money, so we keep it out of Zakah. But later on, these insignificant money became very dominant. For example, if you give the example in time of Umar, the people of Yemen and so on came to Umar and say, we collect honey from the mountains and so on. So they're collecting from nature. They are not doing any work on it, just collection. And take the zakah. Say that the Messiah did not tell any zakah. Say we regard that like harvesting, something which heavens feed by rain. 10% is a good idea. 10, and they forced them to do that. They were said that that's a very good idea. So that the Messiah did not take from honey because it was insignificant. Few people going to the mountain getting a bit of honey is not a matter which you should attend to it and give zakah. So he regarded that as below the zakah level.
I see.
And he said about horses and so on, and honestly, ليس على العبد المؤمن زكاة في فرسه أو عبده. But does not mean that if he has hundreds of slaves that he doesn't have zakah. This is wealth. It should be valued in her. I never noticed this point. I say every wealth must be valued and 200%, except the wealth which has specified like camel, cows, and so on, and sheep, etc.
So which wealth did the Nusul specify, Ustad, again? Which wealth did the Quran and Sunnah specify in terms of zakah?
Every في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم. Finish. And
because some of them make restrictions.
Harvest the thing آتوا حقه يوم حصاده.
For example, on the animals, sometimes there are restrictions on what is zakah, what is not, right?
What's the restriction? No.
For example, mule or donkey. There's no zakah on mule or donkey, right?
Who said there's no zakah? There's some fuqah claiming that. Because they was mentioned in the list, because there was not enough mules and donkeys to be a wealth worthy of zakat living at that time.
I see.
And it's usually a ride animal.
Yes, a ride animal.
In time of Umar, when he heard that racing horses have reached such wealth values like 100,000, he forced them to pay zakat on it. It's become now a commodity with high value.
Now it's commodity, yeah.
Yeah. So, in principle, في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم. Part of that done in time of Prophet specifying it for every 5 camels, this and this until 40, etc. For sheep until 40. Let's assume that and for cows and buffalo are similar to cows. They are all regarded as cows. The same with goats and sheep. They are all from the same category.
Yes, same category.
Mixed. But let's assume another animal is domesticated. Like llama. Let's take llama in Ireland.
Good example. Yes.
Llama is massively domesticated for meat, for everything. If it is so, then the question, zakah must be labeled on that. What should be? They seem to be size-wise similar to cows and buffalo. So we go by 40, 40, 40. Or we go by evaluating at the market and 2.5%. I would say we compare it to the best near animal. Why? Because in the case of جزاء ما قتل من النعم. If you kill some wild animal, then what's equivalent animal? And who will judge that? اثنين ذوي عدل. Two very reasonable man will see, a hyena is the same size like a sheep. So you say if you kill a hyena who are in ihram, you bring a sacrifice of a sheep.
Yes.
But if you kill a big antelope, that's a baqara.
That's a cow, yeah.
So the same apply there. So we make zakah of llama. Some people say it's genealogy close to camel, but I think size-wise it's like cows. I don't know the exact size.
And to be honest, the benefit as well, how it's used, we should take all of this into account. The way a camel is used is very different to how a llama will be used, for example.
Yeah. Or if you think it's closer to camel, you treat it like camel. But most likely like cows.
Yeah, in terms of genealogy, I think it's close to camels.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
But doesn't the geology is not that important in that case. It's really the size and functionality. And being a considerable amount, a whole nation is living on llama and things like that. The same with the double-humped camel is camel, so it's clearly a camel. But we have other animals, for example, in Tibet, we have, what is the name of this? It's from the family of the cow. It's the same cow size, so it's a cow.
Yeah.
And so on. So it has to be, that has to be reviewed, and the law should be written. And every 20, 30 years reviewed if a new, the same with the commodities, wheat, barley, and so on. Now we know there is rice is considerable commodity, etc. It will be treated the
Yes,
same way.
some were arguing that rice is not, for example, included.
Yeah, because it's not included, doesn't mean it is not a wealth which will be zakah. So what will be zakah? The same with like barley, wheat, and so on. And we know that it is because it's being harvested. In the harvest, if it is fully irrigated, that's 5%, and if it is not irrigated at all, it's from the sky and the flood and so on, 10%, and any mix is in between, which will have to be calculated. And the people of expertise will calculate for every area or for every farm the appropriate mix. You may be in an area which is gifted with rain and with a river flowing out, and in an area which all the time you irrigate with pumps and so on, so it's only 5% and so on. And an area half and half. Or maybe a season is more rainy, so all that harvest of that season is irrigated by the heaven, or irrigated by heaven or by water, by flood. The river goes up, fill everything. You don't need to do anything. It's done by nature. It's the same like rain. That harvest will be zakah 10%. Another season, it is dry. You have to pump most of it, so it will be 5%. And in between, that can be calculated for each area and so on. And usually, Ministry of Agriculture or whatever administration will tell you your area or what's expected in your area generally. Divide the country in zones and so on, and what we expect that area to be. Or you do your own calculation. If you have a plantation, you know. If you have, for example, in Najd, nothing grows there except if you irrigate. The rain is never going to. Although sometimes they go in the beginning of the spring in open land, is not owned by them, in a flat land, and then the first rain comes, they go and plant wheat, for example, and just leave it, hoping that it will be enough rain until it comes out, and then they harvest. That's all what they do. So they rely on the rain. They never even put one drop by themselves, because it's not even their land. It's just a plain between the valleys. So if people would know what to do, and the state can be having just a frame in the zakah, but every money has to be. And this is insignificant. Like, for example, in a tribe lives from hunter gathering. Hunter gatherer will be usually hunting, everyone hunting for himself, for his own, and maybe a little bit for saving and drying meat and things like that. That's not a wealth which you'll do zakat on. It's not something which can be marketable and become a main commodity. So hunter-gatherer will be most likely having to pay no zakah on anything, because they don't gather or hunt. But fishery now, if you fish in the ocean, this is massive. It's a huge business. So it's like harvesting, hunting, like harvesting. Or have to look carefully. If it is, for example, let's say salmon farms, it may be then you think about 5%. If it is high sea and so on, maybe 10%, or maybe something in between, knowing that you need to have ships and you have to have fuel and things like that. Discount that from that. Some thought must be spent that, a serious thought, not just the old-fashioned one what the fuqaha got stuck with it. No, you have to do some serious thought, some serious development there. That's what usually. So you remember when people ask me about zakat and so on, I tell them just count all your wealth except your house you are owning and the car you drive, everything else, and everything else is a wealth, and then get 2.5% of it. Mark it to the market at your zakat day, and this in time past discussed about camels and so on. What's about nama, what's growth and so on. There was no need for that because they say يدور عليها الحول. They misunderstood the meaning of حول. حول is when a certain zakat day is due for you. At the zakat date, you count the animal. You don't ask, are they born yesterday or born before the year or the beginning year? And some fuqaha indulged, if it is mid-year, that's all nonsense. It is at the year end what you own now. That's it.
At the year end, what you owe now, yes.
At your zakat year or the fixed zakat day by the state for everyone. Or it may leave it liberal for everyone. Everyone fixes his own birthday. He check that and deliver it to the treasury by himself. Nowadays, you don't need to collect up. Most likely, you don't need. People make their account and deliver to you. And obviously, the authority will check from time to time that people are not cheating and things like that. This is even need to be a bit of regulation there. And then also you have to invoke if someone does not pay his zakat, cheat away for 1 year. What's the but the only hadith you have there is that hadith of Hakim ibn Hizam عن أبيه عن جده. Hakim ibn I don't remember the full name. The jad is Muawiyah ibn Hayd al-Qushayri. If someone skips the zakat for 1 year, we take him the next year the zakat and half of his wealth as a punishment. عزيمة من عزائم ربنا. So half of the wealth will be confiscated as a punishment. Very severe punishment.
Very severe.
Etc. It has to be adopted. I will adopt that if I have power and suggest to the Shura to issue in a law. Other may not adopt it. And then the issue of that ghanaim. Does ghanaim apply to salaries like what the Shia says? So the khums comes even from your salary. That's what the Shia adoption. It has certain merits.
That it has merits, but does it have a basis in terms of the text?
We have to study the reasoning and so on. Go ahead.
Because it seems to me, because I haven't studied khums properly, but it seems to me that the one who started it, from what I've heard, is Musa bin Ja'far al-Kadhim, who had a big political dispute with the
matter who started it. It doesn't matter who started it. His reasoning may be correct. He may understood the ayah better than us. أنا ما غنمتم شيء فلله وخمسه إلى آخره. غنمتم, people interpret in a battlefield. Who said it is a battlefield? Maybe anything you get like a ghanima. The salary is of this type.
Interesting.
For example, that's the reason of Musa. It was Musa al-Kadhim who started that.
From what I've researched, from what I've heard, more
independent, doesn't matter. He recognized that later. They did not recognize.
Because some even have said Ali didn't do it, Rasulullah didn't do it, Hassan Hussein didn't do it, but it
we'll see. Yeah. We don't want to discuss this issue. It's a complex issue. Leave it for the discussion of the Shura.
Of course.
It's simple. That's it. We will study it and see their evidence, other evidence, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends what's maghanimtum.
Interesting.
Some people will say, no, it says for salaries doesn't apply. Only what remains until the zakat date, what's in account, we get that. What else will be consumed and so on. Or invested. If it's invested, it will create wealth. That wealth will be caught at the zakat date. So don't worry, it will get there one way or another. If you do the zakat on all wealth, imagine, and escaping from it will be almost impossible for everyone because most wealth will be ultimately in form of factories, machines, real estate. Nobody can hide that. It cannot be a dead wealth in an account because usually prohibited. If you put it in an account, it will bring you nothing in Islamic domain. So the money will be sitting there doing nothing. And if it is a substantial amount, usually you cannot hide it. Maybe someone will hide it in cryptos and so on, maybe, but there will be a way to it. But definitely the real estate is known and can be accounted for. Here, this is not your house, the one living in it, and this is a commercial or another for rent. Mister, get us the zakat, 2.5% of the value. this have a very good effect in matter of economical policy, because this way you will not put your money in a real estate which is not productive. It must be enough productive so that you can get the 2.5% to pay. Otherwise, you'll be forced to sell that house or that land. So a dead land will not stay dead, because every year they will come cut from you 2.5%. So you have to plant it, you have to build some in it, you have to do something with it productive. It forces productivity. No idle money just frozen in real estate. No. It will cut 2.5%. In 40 years, it will have evaporated. And soon you'll be forced to sell it out. And if you are forced, usually the other sides will take advantage and push the price down. That's just clear how it works economically. But this is all have to be discussed and studied thoroughly. I'm not going to settle it now, not even in our lifetime. But that's it. So there will be no land, someone having shabk, as I say, okay, you have divided. Let it produce. Omar did another thing with that land, which people say, I put my hand on it and revive it. After 3 years, if he doesn't plan to do anything, he take it back. So it's not for forever. It's another way of dealing it. I would do both, but I wouldn't go with 3 years and so on. I just would start living zakah. So the man or the woman or the one who owned that or just revive it and just put a wall around it somewhere in the desert, fine. We evaluate how much is that and ask you 2.5% every year until it evaporates, or do something with it. It will not bring you anything. You cannot just put a circle around it and wait that the city will grow until it reaches that and becomes value. It won't work that way. So you will not do it far away. So you own really good real estate near to the city. You can invest in it and you can do something else. So it will really, if you look just at the current real estate in America, for example, which I think valued over 100 trillion, I think someone can make a study, a small study. If you imagine every year 2.5% of that has to be paid, that's 2.5 trillion. That covers almost all the American budget. You don't need any other tax. And it will force those who have this real estate to maintain it and make it work better. And what doesn't work, luxury real estate and things like that, will become undesirable. Unless you are willing to pay from other things than and have a luxury, that's fine. And the only exception is your own house and your own car. All other things are extra. You have to pay on them. You can't just have 10 cars in the garage because you want to have a Ferrari and so on and so on. And what you are allowed to have discounted out is only one car. Even you could even specify that a reasonable average car. So if you have a Ferrari or you have let's call it maybe Bentley or something like that, which is worth 500,000. No, mister, we cannot all discount that. We just discount from the value only like 50,000, 60,000. A good, nice car, good prestige, that's all. The rest you have to pay zakat on it, 2.5%. You cannot escape zakat by having this is my car and buy a car valued at $1 million pound, for example. No. We need a reasonable car for us. The same way Umar did. People have a Faras, say this is my Faras, but you're using it for races and you can sell it for 100,000. Come on, you pay for that. It is not exempt. We exempt maybe only the price of a regular Faras. You don't give a racing horse and go, this is my Faras. I don't pay. I own it. That's not the way. You cannot cheat this way. But this has to fleshed out and a bit written out in a good legalistic form so that the executive branch and the administration can work with it and manage it properly. That's the reason for having written laws, is that the administration can manage it. In the case of zakat, the Messenger used to write for the zakat collector a document where they can go, for 40 camels, this and this. So he has a document. What is needed for the execution. So say writing it down reduces ijtihad or no, but some basic writing down is needed sometimes. Sometimes even the time prophet it was needed for the zakat collection. These are the amounts. And the general instruction, take it from the average value. Don't take the best, not to the lowest. Take the average, reasonable, middle, which you can recognize. When you go collecting a zakat, for example, of someone who has cows, a range of cows, 1,000 of cows, he is entitled to give you in cows. You will not take from him cows which are almost dying, nor the best cows like the bull who is used for fertilization. So give me this one. No. They give you a reasonable cow. Usually a females actually are given a good one of a reasonable age, not one who is about to die for the treasury. No, wasn't. Don't take that opportunity as a tax collector to get the best out of him. No, but don't accept the lowest. The reasonable middle. And usually there will be standards. There will be association of cattle owner and so on. Like nowadays, there are the standards, and they're experts which come. Oh yeah, this is a reasonable cow. This is not reasonable. Don't take it. That's all. What harm if you write that? If in doubt, that's what a cow offered for you by, or the cow's offered as a zakah, because every 40 you bring one as a zakah. If you are in doubt about that, if it is, then consult an expert from the local cattle owner association and so on. They have experts who can come and give you a judgment. Simple. But writing it down, make things smooth and easy. That's not over managing. And for the zakah is needed. Usually, money issues has to be regulated more strictly, because human beings tend to be greedy and tend to have inclination to cheat about money and play games. And you know the story of Ibn al-Lutbiyah, who came back and the messenger, he counted him. He counts everyone collector when he comes back. Then he said, "This is for you, and this is given to gift to me." Ziyara was outraged, and he gave the famous khutbah. I sent someone to do action which Allah has given me the power to manage, and they come back and say, "This is for you. This is gifted to me." If you had stayed in his house, or your mother's house and father's house, would he have received gifts? The gifts is because he's a collector. He's abusing his office. No gifts. And that's the reason they say hadayal or amal ghulul. Anyone in public office taking gift, it's ghulul. It's stealing from a treasury. He could not have received that if he was staying in his mother's house, not doing that public office. So in public office, any gift coming to you has to go to a treasury. Except then we have to flesh it out. If it's from relatives, for occasions, family occasions, which is understandable. But in executing of your office, no. That's most likely stealing money, or it is a form of bribe. There must be something windy there, questionable. And things like that, you can add it. That's in the case of this, obviously, in public office, you don't need. There's just one statement about that, and should be mentioned in every one appointments decree or contract if it's a contractor. That during the execution, you cannot accept from gifts except from the next of kin under these conditions, or better than accept no. And even from next of kin, you have to declare it. I received this from my cousin in my birthday this summer, and to declare it so we know it is proper. You are obliged for declaration. If you are working for me, for the state, as a contractor or as an employee. If you don't want that, stay in your home. Don't work for me. That's simple. And put it in the contracts. That's not over administration. That's basic administration. That's what Umar implementing. All the people who work for him, when they enter the work, they make account for all what they have. At the end, Umar compare the two, and any suspicious increase, he will take it to the treasury. You couldn't have made that unless you are doing our work. So that's not how. And you remember the story with his sons, Ubaydullah and Abdullah, went, I think, to Kufa and borrowed from the treasury there, and then invested and so on and made some money and returned the borrowed. When they came back, Umar said, "What I say, we did that and we returned the loan." Say it doesn't work this way. All that comes to the treasury, even the excess. They said, for God's sake, we returned that. Say, he did not give you the money. He could not borrow. He would not have given you, except knowing that you are the sons of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Don't you invested you in this relation to get the loan. That's all the treasury. And then the Sahaba mediated and they came to the compromise and said, okay, they returned the loan, but the extra gains, let's be reasonable. They worked for it and so on, make it 50-50. And 50 went back to the treasury. I must say, no, I'm sharing that. You couldn't have. Grudgingly, after difficulty. So that can't be codified in a reasonable way. You see, in matter of money and so on, controlling the employees and so on, Umar had already enacted or decrees and details because this is needed. We know how humans behave with money, how greedy they are, and how they tend to cheat and steal. Other things were liberal at that time because people were reasonable and doing things reasonably. Nowadays, they are less reasonable, and societies and people number is huge, and societies are more complicated. Technicalities have developed. And now we can have some of these technicalities helping in that. With the principle that reduce adoption as much as possible, reduce administration as much as possible. But this is, again, human judgment. It's a general principle. You can ensure it in the Constitution. Laws must be enacted this way and this way to be minimal, to be as easy to the people, not complicated, and so on. Like in the chapter about adoption of the ruling, of the rules, yeah, adoption. The chapter about adoption, I think, in Hakimiyya, or it is in obedience to, I think, in Hakimiyya. The chapter about adoption there in the book of Hakimiyya. Chapter about adoption, a big chapter to resolve this problem of adopting Hukm Shari and so on. And the principle, how to restrict mubah and things like that. And what are principles? This could be written in the Constitution, could be guiding principles. Why not? Good principles. That will be only regulating only the necessary, should not be over restrictive and making hardship for the people, should be using the easiest and simplest and most straightforward, etc. The principles are there mentioned. And this was brainstormed and thought out by the people who wrote Mudhakkarat al-Nasiha in Arabia in the early 90s, the last century. And before we came here, this Mudhakkarat al-Nasiha have the issue, discussed the issue of adoption of mubah. Because now time, the option is on the table. Because Al Saud restrict mubah and play game with it, saying, oh, it's mubah, we can restrict. No, you cannot restrict. Mubah is mubah for the one who is exercising it. But the state can restrict if public interest requires that, with the condition mentioned there. Discussed all the condition and all what the fuqaha said in time past and what the constitution, other constitution countries did, and came to a summary, which is in adoption. So this is not a simple-minded area. There's complex areas, yeah. But in principle, that adoption chapter in the book, I claim it goes back to Quran and Sunnah. Doesn't go to the American procedures and way. I mean, some of this I mentioned there, but but the principle, like it must be easy, could not be hardship for the people. Why? Because there's clear injunction. Whoever takes affairs of the ummah and manage it hard or make it harsh to them, Allah, fabricated, may Allah make life harsh for him. So he's committing an act which is worthy of condemnation. That has to be how to procedurally to do it, how to manage it in dunya. That has to be analyzed case by case. Good. I think I spoke too much about the Baharat, but that's the people. They won't say no constitution, no. So that's a simple mindedness. That someone does not know how states and societies are run, living in a dream world. And even does not know how the Prophet was managing and the Sahaba were managing. In certain areas, they were having strict regulation. The regulation that state employee are not allowed to work except for that work, and any earning they do is suspicious, and he will confiscate, like Umar did with Abu Hurairah when he came back from Bahrain. It was with Abu Ala al-Hadrami. The last year, he did not mention anything from Messenger of Allah. When he came back, Umar asked him what is his accounts and say, Ya adu Allah, akalta mal Allah. Say, I am not the enemy of Allah. I did not consume the money of Allah, the treasury. Said, no. And he beat him up and took all the money to the treasury. Abu Hurairah was appointed under the Prophet without this condition spelled out to him, but Umar applied it to him, wrestled him out. So he has already hard regulation in that area, which nowadays only recently enacted in America. American president has to put all his wealth when enter the job in a so-called blind trust, and they appoint a trustee who runs it and give him the general policy. I wish to invest in bonds and so on and so on. And then after that, he doesn't communicate. Theoretically, he's not allowed to communicate with him at all until his term ends, to avoid any issue of corruption and bribing and gifts and things like that. Obviously, Trump is violating all of that. He doesn't care. But that's by law. When enacted just recently, half a century ago, a great breakthrough in constitutional law. Come on, Umar did it 1400 years ago.
Yeah.
For example. So it depends upon the history. The other issues, Majlis election was not mature yet. The situation was not settled. And the time of Bakr, Umar, they were most to be Muslims and were fighting in the front. It was state of war. You could say a state of emergency. And still they had reasonable shura in Medina. Until the tyrant Munafiq Kafir jumped on the power, Muawiyah. And as Hassan Basri said, if one of these four, if it would have been anybody, it will be destructive and getting him to the hellfire. That he forced himself with the Ummah with a sword. Otherwise, it would have, if he didn't do that, it would have been shura until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And then the adoption of Ziyad, violating the well-established by Tawatur Hadith, al-Walad al-Firash al-Ahir al-Hajar. And then he mentioned two other things. Okay. So that's it, resolving by the sword. So there was no time to develop further details. Yeah. Okay. So these are deep issues. That's it. It's not easy. That's the reason the book of I'm announcing against 30 years Sultan Ummah. I recognize that we have finished sovereignty of the Ummah, allegiance, all of these things. So the main principles we think it's hardcore, well established, can be formulated in a constitution. Then we have also constitutional draft of Hizb al-Tahrir, which has some good ideas and quite a number of efficiency. And we have some drafts here and there. So we study all of that. And also I studied the constitutions all over the world. I'm not claiming to be a constitutionalist specialist. I studied them. And you see many procedures there have stood the test of time. Others have failed and became a real problem.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, inshallah.
It's not an easy job. It is a very difficult. It's a very big. But ultimately, we have to have our own constitutional draft. Put it on the table, enshrined in a book or something like that. And so there's a draft for the, inshallah, if some constitutional writing assembly comes in the future, hopefully not far away.
Yes.
Hopefully, then they have a draft and they can discuss it then with the Sharia evidences and so on, not just out of arbitrary. So that's the reason Sultan Ummah, the book, where is Sultan Ummah? There's so many issues to be settled before that. The Muhasabat al-Hukam is one issue. Ta'at Uli al-Amr is one book defining certain things. Al-Hakimiyya or Al-Shara in a separate book analyzing other things. So all this will give a frame which slowly will give you a good frame, modern, structured, with minimal address of procedures, but sufficient so that procedures will not be undermined and played with.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.